Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. After the main character dies, he wakes up inside of Invincible and he soon finds out he is reborn as Nolan Grayson. The main character gets reborn just after Nolan had already killed the Guardians of the Globe. What is he gonna do? Will he betray the Viltrumites?
Invincible, reborn as Omni-Man with Naruto. Summoning System. Chapter 1, The Open Window. Shredder sat in his cramped apartment, slouched in his chair, his eyes fixed on the flickering screen. Invincible had always captivated him, violent, unpredictable, and raw. The blood, the gore, the chaos, it felt like a reflection of his own life. The characters, flawed and broken, fighting for survival in a world that didn't care about them, felt strangely familiar. 1. The room was dim, the only light coming from the television. His apartment was small, sparsely decorated, a few cheap pieces of furniture, and an old rug that was starting to wear out. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, and the night was alive with the sounds of the city. But inside, it was still, almost suffocatingly so. His thoughts began to drift as he watched the show, half engaged with the characters but more lost in his own mind. Something felt wrong, like a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. 1. Shredder's gaze shifted to the window across the room. It was wide open. The breeze from outside flowed in, carrying the scent of rain, crisp and cold. The kind of chill that crept under your skin, made you want to pull your blanket tighter. He had left it open earlier, hoping for some fresh air, but now, as he stared at the darkness beyond the glass, he felt exposed. The thought passed quickly, swallowed by the rush of adrenaline that came with the next action-packed scene in the show. But the unease still lingered, gnawing at the edges of his awareness. He glanced back at the window. Close it. Just get up and close it, his mind urged. But he didn't. The show was too gripping. The characters were fighting for their lives. He didn't want to miss what happened next. He could deal with it later. 1. Another sound caught his attention, more distinct this time, a soft scrape. Like a footstep on the outside ledge, just below the window. It was barely audible, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He turned toward the sound, the TV momentarily forgotten. A chill crawled down his spine. The room felt too quiet, too still. His pulse quickened. Suddenly, there was a sharp crack. The window shattered in an explosion of glass. Before Shredder could react, a figure leapt through the gap. It all happened so fast, the blur of motion catching him off guard. The assassin moved with terrifying precision, landing on the floor like a shadow, instantly closing the distance between them. Shredder's body froze, heart hammering. The figure was tall, cloaked in dark clothes, his face obscured by a mask. The blade he carried gleamed in the dim light, too sharp, too deadly. It was over before Shredder could even rise from his chair. The knife flashed, slicing through the air, and then it was buried deep into Shredder's side. The force of the strike knocked the breath out of him. Pain exploded through his torso, sharp and hot. Blood surged from the wound, splattering against the floor. Shredder gasped, staggering back, trying to find his bearings. What? His words were ragged, barely a whisper. His mind struggled to catch up with the reality of what was happening. The TV continued to play in the background, the sounds of violence on screen so distant and hollow compared to the raw agony tearing through his body. His hand instinctively pressed against the wound, but it did little to stem the flow of blood. He tried to push himself up from the chair, to get away, but the world was already spinning. His vision blurred, the edges of his sight darkening. The floor felt cold under his palms as he stumbled forward, but every movement felt like a slow-motion struggle against his own failing body. Why didn't I close the window? It was the one thought that kept echoing through his foggy mind. He should have known. He should have sensed that something wasn't right. The window. The air. The silence. It all felt wrong. And now, he was paying the price for it. The assassin didn't speak, didn't make a sound. He stood there, watching, waiting, like some silent force of inevitability. Shredder's breath grew shallow, each gasp harder to come by. His body was growing colder, weaker. The room around him felt smaller, the walls closing in as the pain in his side intensified. The knife was still buried in him, and with every pulse of his heart, it felt as though the world was closing in around him. His hand, slick with blood, slipped off the floor as he tried to drag himself away. He couldn't escape. His strength was gone. I should have closed the window, the thought repeated, louder this time. But it was too late. His hands fell limply to the floor, his vision dimming as the darkness overtook him. The final breath he took was shaky, almost a whisper, and as his body slumped against the cold floor, the TV continued to flash its brutal scenes of violence, the world outside still oblivious to his last moments. And Shredder was gone, lost to a mistake that would haunt him forever, the simple act of leaving the window open. Chapter 2, The Awakening of Omni-Man. Shredder's head was a chaotic swirl of confusion as he slowly became aware of his surroundings. His vision was blurry at first, the sharp, white light above him stabbing at his senses. His body ached, every muscle and joint seeming to scream in protest, as if he had been through a brutal fight. The sterile smell of a hospital room assaulted his nostrils, mingling with the faint beep of a heart monitor in the background. Where am I? His eyes fluttered open, and his surroundings slowly began to come into focus. He was lying in a bed, hooked up to various machines. His chest tightened in a momentary panic, but as he blinked and shifted his body, the immediate shock of being confined began to dissipate. His mind was a jumbled mess, filled with fragments of memories that didn't quite make sense. He had been watching Invincible, the brutal, blood-soaked world of Titans, and then, a shift. He couldn't remember the exact moment, but something had changed. He felt different. Powerful. What happened to me? 1. His hand moved to his face, and he froze. His features were familiar, but not his own. His fingers brushed against the sharp edge of his jawline, the scruff of a beard, and the unmistakable feeling of a warrior's face. A cold, detached, and unforgiving face. It wasn't his, it was Omni-Man's. 1. The memories flooded in, each one more violent and clear than the last. The battle. The destruction. The guardians of the globe. He had killed them. Coldly, mercilessly. He remembered the feel of their bodies breaking beneath his fists. He could still taste the blood in the air, still hear the sounds of their final breaths. And his son, Mark, the betrayal. 1. He could feel it all, the mission, the Viltrumite ideals, the unshakable belief in his cause. He was Omni-Man now. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. No, this can't be real. He reached for his head, feeling the sharp pain of an overwhelming migraine pulse through his temples. His breaths were ragged, but then, suddenly another sensation, another presence. A voice, soft and metallic, filled his mind. Ding! Omni-Man's pulse quickened as his eyes snapped open. The voice, calm and direct, spoke again, cutting through the fog in his brain. System activated. System? The words hung in the air, and Omni-Man sat up with surprising ease, his body moving with a strength and fluidity that felt instinctual. This wasn't just some fleeting dream. Whatever was happening, whatever this was, it was real. Welcome, Omni-Man. You are now part of the Summoner System. Omni-Man's heart skipped a beat. Summoner System? It didn't make sense. What kind of system? The voice continued, unwavering. You have the ability to summon powerful warriors from other worlds. These warriors will grow stronger under your guidance and will be loyal to you as sons. The more you train them and help them grow, the more you will unlock. They will fight for you, become stronger, and aid you in your quest. 1. Omni-Man's mind raced, the new information settling over him. Summon warriors? Loyal sons? It felt familiar. Like a strange combination of his Viltrumite ideals and something else. Something more tangible, more personal. He gritted his teeth, trying to make sense of it. I control them. I train them. They grow stronger for me. They are my sons. Your first task, you may summon Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha from the world of Naruto. They will be your first sons. They will grow stronger under your tutelage. Omni-Man paused, the weight of the task settling in. He could summon them now, immediately, if he wanted. But something about the idea of bringing them into the chaos of a hospital room didn't sit right with him. He didn't know what to expect, or how they would react. The safer option was to wait until he was back at home, in familiar surroundings, where he could control the situation. He took a deep breath, and the voice in his mind seemed to acknowledge his decision. You may summon them at any time. But for now, return home. It will be safer there for you to train them. Omni-Man nodded to himself, standing up with ease. He felt the full power of his Viltrumite form coursing through him. His body, more resilient than ever, was a testament to his newfound strength. He could sense the power inside him, the kind of strength that only a few could comprehend. He needed to control this power, and these new warriors were the key to that control. The thought of Naruto and Sasuke, their potential, their strength appealed to him. The idea of molding them, shaping them into loyal, powerful weapons under his guidance, felt almost natural. The more he trained them, the more his own power would grow. They were tools to further his mission. With that thought in mind, Omni-Man left the sterile hospital room, his steps confident and strong. He didn't know exactly what to expect from this new world, this new system, but he was ready to bend it to his will. As he made his way home, he could feel the power surging within him. He had a mission now, a new path to walk. A path where he would not only conquer, but shape the very future by training warriors from different worlds. Once he was home, he could summon Naruto and Sasuke. The idea of their loyalty, their strength, was intoxicating. They would be his loyal sons to carry out his will. 1. And soon, he would unlock even greater power. Chapter 3, Confessions in the Sky. Omni-Man, or rather Shredder in his new, terrifying form, landed on the grass outside his home. The adrenaline from the violent destruction of the Guardians of the Globe still hummed in his veins, and yet, the internal storm raged louder than the remnants of his recent battle. The power of the Viltrumites coursed through his new body, but with it came a weight, a burden of responsibility he wasn't sure he could bear. He looked up at the house, the place that should feel like a sanctuary but now seemed foreign to him. His mind kept circling the same thoughts. I'm Omni-Man now. I killed the Guardians. I'm not the man I once was. The idea of turning against the Viltrumites was terrifying. They were relentless, cold, and unforgiving. He glanced at the house again. Debbie would be inside, completely unaware of what he had just done, of the horrors he had unleashed. She didn't know the truth about the Viltrumites, the truth that they weren't the peaceful beings he had once claimed they were. He hadn't told her any of it. How could he? But now, standing outside, feeling the weight of his new identity pressing down on him, he realized he couldn't keep this up. Debbie deserved to know something, anything. He couldn't keep the lies going, not when his heart was so torn. With a deep, reluctant breath, he walked to the door. He pushed it open and entered the house. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and there she was, sitting on the couch as though everything was fine. As though the world hadn't just been flipped on its head. Nolan, you're home, Debbie said, standing up with a concerned look. Are you okay? You've been gone for hours. Omni-Man's eyes narrowed slightly, his heart aching. She doesn't know. She doesn't know anything. I need to talk to you, Debbie, he said quietly, his voice not his own, not entirely. There was a rawness to it, a vulnerability that he rarely allowed himself to show. Something important. Something I've been keeping from you. Debbie raised an eyebrow, her face full of concern. What's going on? Are you okay? He exhaled slowly. I'm not what you think I am, Debbie. His voice wavered slightly as he spoke, but he couldn't stop now. I've told you before that my people, the Viltrumites, are peaceful, that we're here to help Earth. That was a lie. Debbie froze. She hadn't expected this. She stepped back slightly, her face going pale. What do you mean? Nolan, you said your people were peaceful. You said you were sent here to protect us. Omni-Man lowered his gaze. This was the moment. He could no longer hide from the truth. The Viltrumites are not peaceful, Debbie. We're conquerors. We take over planets, and we wipe out any resistance. I've been sent here to weaken Earth, to prepare it for the Viltrumite takeover. Debbie shook her head slowly, as if trying to process what he was saying. No, this isn't what you said. This isn't what you promised. I know, Nolan said, his voice strained. I lied to you. But it's not that simple. I didn't want to believe it either. When I came here, I wanted to be the person you thought I was. I wanted to believe that my mission could be something noble. But the truth is, I've been conditioned to follow this path. It's not about helping Earth, it's about domination. I was sent to destroy the Guardians of the Globe, to make Earth vulnerable for the Viltrumites to take over. His hands clenched into fists. The memory of the brutal fight with the Guardians flashed before his eyes. He could still feel the weight of their deaths, still hear the sounds of their bodies breaking under his power. His son, Mark, would never understand the decision he had made. Debbie stepped back, her face pale with shock. How could you do that? Her voice cracked, torn between disbelief and hurt. How could you lie to me for so long, Nolan? You killed them. You killed them all. I know, he whispered, his voice breaking. And I'm sorry, Debbie. I wish I could go back and change it all, but I can't. The Viltrumites are ruthless. If I don't follow their orders, they'll come for me, and they'll come for you, too. Debbie stared at him, her eyes wide with fear and anger. So, what now? What do you want, Nolan? He closed his eyes, his mind clouded with confusion. The weight of the decision he had to make pressed down on him. I can't stay with the Viltrumites. I can't keep doing this. The idea of turning against them terrified him, but he knew it was the only choice. His mission, his life, everything was leading him to this breaking point. The thought of fighting against the Viltrumites, of betraying his people, was overwhelming. I want to give up this mission, Debbie, he said quietly. I don't want to keep destroying this world. But I'm scared. If I turn away from the Viltrumites, they'll destroy me. I don't know what will happen to us, to you. His voice was strained, the words heavy with the weight of the decision he'd been avoiding. Debbie's face softened, but there was still a flicker of anger in her eyes. So, what now? What happens next? He looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest. I don't know. But I'm going to try to make things right. I'll protect you, and I'll protect Earth, even if it means going against everything I've known. As the words left his mouth, Omni-Man felt a shift within himself. The system in his mind, the strange force that had granted him power, the ability to summon warriors, reminded him of what was to come. Naruto, Sasuke. He could call upon them anytime, and when he did, they would fight for him, become his sons, and grow stronger under his training. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. But for now, he knew one thing for certain. His fight wasn't just against the Viltrumites, it was against everything he had been taught to believe in. And with Debbie's gaze fixed on him, he knew that his next steps would be the most crucial of his life. Chapter 4, The Sons of a New Era. The room was thick with tension. Debbie stood in stunned silence, her mind reeling from what Nolan had just revealed. He had confessed that he wasn't just a hero on Earth, he was part of an alien race of conquerors, the Viltrumites. The weight of that truth felt like an avalanche, crushing everything she thought she knew about him. "Nolan," she whispered, her voice barely audible. You've been lying to me. This whole time." Nolan could barely bring himself to meet her eyes, the truth he had been holding in for so long now spilling from his lips. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. But the Viltrumites, they don't care about Earth. They want to conquer it. I didn't know what to do anymore. I didn't want to destroy everything, but they would have taken everything from me, from us, if I didn't do what they wanted." Debbie's eyes were filled with hurt, and she took a step back. "How can you expect me to understand this? You've been lying to me about everything. You killed the Guardians, Nolan. You killed them, people who were trying to protect the world." Her voice cracked with emotion. "And now you expect me to just accept this?" "I don't expect you to understand," Nolan said quietly, his voice thick with regret. "I didn't want any of this. But I can't go back, Debbie. I can't undo what I've done. But I can try to make it right. I can protect this world, our world, in my own way." Before Debbie could respond, the strange sensation in Nolan's mind pulsed again. The system that had been silently guiding him since his transformation, since his rebirth, activated once more. It was a strange, alien feeling, as though something inside of him was shifting. "Naruto. Sasuke." Nolan's eyes narrowed as he stood, mentally focusing on the system's prompt. He reached out, calling forth the names that had become so familiar to him, even if they were strange in the context of everything else that had changed. The air seemed to shimmer for a moment, and suddenly, two figures appeared in the living room before him. A boy with spiky blonde hair and a headband, dressed in orange ninja attire, and another with dark hair, cold eyes, and a Sharingan-like pattern on his forehead. It was Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha, two of the most powerful warriors from another world. Debbie gasped, stumbling back in shock as the two boys appeared out of thin air. "What? Who are these kids, Nolan?" Nolan turned to face them, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "These two are my sons. Naruto. Sasuke." The two boys stood there, looking around curiously, unaware of the tension in the room. They weren't fully aware of the gravity of the situation, of the lies, the deception, and the chaos surrounding them, but Nolan was. "I've brought you here to train you. To become stronger. You'll be my sons not by blood, but by what we'll build together," Nolan said, the weight of his decision hanging heavily in the air. "I'm not just trying to protect Earth. I'm trying to make sure this world stands a chance. The Viltrumites will come, and when they do, you two will be ready. Strong enough to defend it." Debbie's eyes flickered between Nolan and the two boys. She was still struggling to process what was happening. "You want to adopt them? And train them? As if this is some kind of family." "I know it's a lot to take in, Debbie," Nolan said, his voice quiet. "But I have to do this. I can't let Earth fall into the hands of the Viltrumites. They can't have this planet. Not after everything I've seen." Before Debbie could respond, the sound of a door slamming open echoed from the hallway. "Mom? Dad?" Mark's voice came from the entryway, and Nolan felt his heart skip a beat. Mark appeared in the doorway, still in his civilian clothes. He had clearly been listening. Nolan's heart sank as he saw the look on his son's face: betrayal, hurt, and confusion all written across it. "I heard everything, Mark said, his voice shaky. Dad, you killed them. You killed the Guardians. All this time, you've been lying to me, to Mom. What the hell is going on? His voice broke, the anger and disbelief clear in his words. Nolan stepped forward, trying to meet Mark's gaze, but Mark wasn't having it. No, don't try to explain it, Mark said, his fists clenching at his sides. You've lied to us for so long. I trusted you, Dad. I thought you were doing the right thing. I thought you were the hero I looked up to, the one who protected Earth. But now I find out you've been working with the Viltrumites all along? You've been destroying everything. Nolan's expression hardened, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes, a fear he couldn't suppress. Mark, you don't understand. I didn't have a choice. Mark shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. No, you had a choice. You just chose to lie to everyone you loved. And now you expect me to stand by your side. Mark, Debbie interjected, her voice breaking. She had been quiet, watching the exchange unfold, but her tears were starting to show. Mark, please. I don't know what to say either. But your father, he's trying to protect us. He's trying to protect Earth, even if it means making hard choices. But Mark was too far gone. His heart was shattered by the betrayal, the lies, and the sudden reality of who his father truly was. You don't get it, Mom. You don't understand, Mark said, his voice trembling. I can't stay here with him, not after everything he's done. Not after everything he's said. He turned to face his father one last time, his eyes filled with pain and anger. I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. Without another word, Mark turned and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Debbie collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. Nolan, what have we done? What have you done? Nolan stood motionless for a moment, his heart breaking as he watched his son leave. The weight of everything of his past, his mission, his betrayal seemed to press down on him more than ever. Mark. I didn't want this, Nolan muttered to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. The room was silent, save for the distant sound of Mark's footsteps fading away. Debbie wiped her tears, her eyes red, but she didn't say anything more. She didn't know what to say. Nolan turned toward Naruto and Sasuke, both still standing awkwardly in the living room, having witnessed the entire exchange. This isn't the right time, he muttered under his breath. But we need to prepare. I don't know what will happen next, but we have to get stronger. All of us. Chapter 5, Settling in. The tension in the house was still thick, but the moment Mark stormed out, a strange silence settled over the room. Debbie wiped away the tears that were still streaming down her face, and Nolan, his mind still spinning, turned away from the window. His thoughts were swirling, but there was no time to linger on his failure as a father. The situation was far from over, and there were bigger challenges ahead. Nolan, Debbie's voice broke through his thoughts. She stood at the door leading to the kitchen, her arms folded over her chest. She looked at him with a mix of exhaustion and uncertainty. What do we do now? About them, about Naruto and Sasuke. Nolan exhaled, rubbing his face as he thought. The two boys, who had appeared out of nowhere and were now standing awkwardly in the living room, were still absorbing the gravity of the situation. Naruto, as always, was the first to speak. So, this is Earth, huh? It's way different than I imagined, Naruto said, his usual energy filling the room, despite the tension. He grinned widely, looking around. I mean, it's kind of cool. I bet there are a ton of strong people here. Is there anyone here who's as strong as me? Sasuke, on the other hand, said nothing. He simply watched the conversation unfold, his arms crossed and his gaze unreadable. His quiet demeanor stood in stark contrast to Naruto's lively chatter. Debbie couldn't help but smile slightly at the dynamic between the two boys. "Well, we'll get you both settled in. I'll get some clothes for you." She walked toward the stairs. "You can stay here for the time being. I'll make sure you have what you need." Nolan glanced at her, still deep in thought. "Thanks, Debbie. I'm going to head down to the basement for a bit. I need to move some things around." As Debbie disappeared upstairs to grab clothes for the boys, Naruto's voice interrupted the silence again. "Hey, Sasuke. Wanna check out the kitchen with me? I bet we could make some awesome food." Sasuke just gave him a glance, his face still unreadable. "I'm not interested in cooking. But you can go ahead and mess up the kitchen all you want." "Mess up the kitchen?" Naruto puffed his chest out. "I'll show you. I can cook just fine." Sasuke raised an eyebrow but said nothing further. Meanwhile, Debbie returned to the living room, holding up a couple of t-shirts and pants for Naruto and Sasuke. "Here, these should fit for now. I'll grab some other things later." "Thanks, Mrs. Grayson," Naruto said, taking the clothes eagerly. Sasuke nodded silently, his eyes flicking briefly to Debbie before he took the clothes as well. Nolan headed for the basement, moving with purpose. There were boxes, crates, and various items stacked up in the area he had set aside for training. The room was already beginning to feel like a place of both preparation and isolation. He needed the space to train the boys, to give them the strength they would need to face what was coming. The basement was the perfect spot to start laying the groundwork, and he needed to move everything around to make room for them. Debbie, meanwhile, busied herself in the kitchen. The air filled with the scent of dinner cooking, a small comfort in a home that had become anything but normal. Naruto had found his way into the kitchen, of course, attempting to help but already managing to make a mess of the ingredients. "No, Naruto," Sasuke said, almost exasperated. "You're supposed to chop the vegetables, not throw them all over the place." Debbie watched the scene with an amused smile. Despite everything that had happened, seeing the boys interact like this made her feel, for a brief moment, like things weren't completely falling apart. There was something endearing about the way Naruto's enthusiasm clashed with Sasuke's cold indifference. She found herself liking them more than she expected. After a while, the meal was ready, and Debbie called for Nolan. "Dinner's ready, Nolan. I need your help to get everything set up." Nolan, having finished arranging the basement, walked up the stairs to the kitchen. He glanced at the two boys, who were now seated at the table, Naruto looking pleased with his work despite the chaos, while Sasuke sat with a quiet, almost amused expression. "This place smells good," Nolan commented as he sat down, still not fully at ease. He glanced at Debbie, his thoughts lingering on the conversation earlier. "Thanks for taking care of everything." "Of course," she said, her voice soft. "But I've been thinking about where they should sleep." Nolan frowned slightly. "They'll have to stay in the basement for now. It's the safest place for them to train. It's the most secure area in the house." Debbie shook her head. "I know you're trying to protect them, Nolan, but they're still just kids. They've been through a lot, and I think they deserve a little more comfort. For tonight, at least. We can move them into the basement later." Nolan hesitated. His initial instinct was to keep them close, keep them in a place where he could control their training and safety. But seeing how much Debbie was trying to hold on to some semblance of normalcy in the chaos, he relented. "All right, they can sleep in the guest room for now," Nolan agreed. "But it won't be long before we start their training. They need to get strong." Debbie nodded, clearly relieved by the compromise. "Thank you, Nolan. I just don't want them to feel like prisoners here." "Understood," Nolan muttered as he began serving himself dinner, still distracted. He looked over at Naruto and Sasuke, who were now quietly digging into their food. He knew it wasn't going to be easy to get them to the level of strength they needed, but he had a plan. They'll have to be ready. We don't have much time. As dinner continued, the house felt a little less empty, a little more like a home even though everything was still so uncertain. But Nolan couldn't shake the feeling that things were only going to get more complicated from here. Chapter 6, The Burden of Truth. Mark didn't know how long he'd been running. He wasn't sure if he was trying to escape the words Nolan had said or the chaos in his mind. Either way, he ended up at Eve's house, far from the place he once called home. The familiar surroundings of her neighborhood didn't bring him comfort, it only felt like another world entirely. His heart still ached from the confrontation, the weight of his father's betrayal heavier than any punch or fight he'd ever been in. Mark had trusted Nolan with everything. He'd always believed in his father, in his strength, and his purpose. But now, nothing felt the same. When Eve opened the door, she didn't ask any questions. She didn't need to. She could see the pain on his face, the hurt in his eyes. She stepped aside, letting him in without hesitation. "Mark," Eve said gently, her voice calm but filled with concern. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." Mark didn't answer at first. He just collapsed onto the couch, his hands gripping his hair. "I don't even know where to start." Eve sat down beside him, her eyes filled with worry. "Start with whatever's going through your head right now. I'm here, okay?" For a moment, Mark just sat there, staring blankly ahead, trying to find the words. He knew he had to talk about it, he couldn't keep the thoughts swirling in his mind. But it wasn't easy. His father, Nolan, was a hero. At least, that's what Mark had always believed. "Dad." Mark started, his voice breaking. "He's not who I thought he was." Eve frowned, her heart aching for him. "What do you mean?" Mark took a deep breath and ran a hand through his hair. "He's been lying to us. He's not a hero, not really. He's part of this alien race, the Viltrumites. They're not peaceful like he said. They conquer planets, Eve. They destroy everything. And I don't know what to do. I don't even know if I should confront him about it. I'm not sure if I can trust him anymore." Eve blinked, processing what Mark was saying. Her mind was racing, trying to understand the full weight of it. "Wait, you're saying he's one of them? A Viltrumite? But he didn't tell you this until now." Mark nodded, looking like he was on the verge of cracking. "Yet. He's been lying to me, to us, for years. He said the Viltrumites were peaceful. That they just wanted to help Earth. But that's all been a lie. And now, I don't even know what to think of him anymore." Eve shifted closer to him, putting a hand on his shoulder. "Mark, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine how that must feel. But, what are you going to do now?" Mark shook his head, his mind swirling with doubt. "I don't know. I want to confront him. I want to know the truth about everything. But I'm scared, Eve. What if he goes off the deep end? What if he tries to take over Earth again? I can't fight him if it comes to that." Eve's eyes softened as she looked at him. "You're not alone in this, Mark. If it comes down to it, you have me, you have the others. But you also need to think carefully about what you want to do next. I can't tell you how to handle your father, but I know you're strong. You don't have to do it alone." Mark closed his eyes, the weight of her words sinking in. The anger he felt toward his father was undeniable. But there was a deep, gnawing fear in him, too. What if Nolan went rogue? What if he tried to destroy everything Mark had fought to protect? "I don't even know if I can look at him the same way again," Mark said quietly. "He killed the Guardians. He's been lying to me, to Mom, and now he wants me to follow him, train these kids, and fight the Viltrumites. But what if he's just using me? What if he wants me to become like him? Eve remained silent for a moment, letting him process everything. Mark, you can't control what your father does. But you can control how you respond. You don't have to follow him. You're your own person, and you don't need to become what he wants you to be. You're a hero in your own right. Mark looked at her, her words sinking in slowly. He hadn't felt like a hero in a long time, not after the truth about Nolan had come out. But maybe Eve was right. Maybe he didn't have to follow his father's path. I want to protect Earth, Mark said, his voice firm now, despite the uncertainty that still lingered. I want to be the hero I've always tried to be. But I don't know if I can do that with him by my side. Eve smiled softly at him. You don't have to figure it all out right now. But you need to trust yourself. You're not the same as him. You're better than that. Mark looked down, his mind racing. Eve was right about one thing: he needed time to think. To figure out what he was going to do. The possibility of facing his father again, of having to fight him, terrified him. But at the same time, he knew that it was only a matter of time before Nolan would push him to make a choice. And that choice could mean the end of everything he had worked so hard to protect. What if I have to fight him, Eve? What if he pushes me too far? Eve looked at him, her eyes soft with understanding. Then we'll be ready. We'll face it together. Mark nodded, though a sense of dread still lingered deep within him. He wasn't ready for that fight, not yet. But as long as he had people who cared about him, who stood with him, maybe he could find the strength to face whatever was coming. Even if it meant going up against his own father. Chapter 7, Training begins. The house was quiet, but the atmosphere felt far from peaceful. While Debbie worked in the kitchen and Suzuki and Naruto ate with surprising enthusiasm, Nolan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Mark had stormed out, and though he knew his son needed time to process everything, a part of Nolan was anxious. He hadn't expected Mark to take the news well. Still, Nolan couldn't help but wonder how long he'd be able to keep up the facade before Mark truly realized the extent of the truth. As the kids finished eating, Debbie walked into the living room, offering a small, forced smile. Everything's going fine in the kitchen. I'm just worried about Mark. Nolan exhaled, glancing at her before nodding. I know. But we have to stay focused. He'll come around eventually. You really think so? Debbie's voice was tinged with worry, her gaze soft as she observed Naruto, who was happily scarfing down his meal, and Suzuki, who sat quietly, almost stoically, eating his food. We'll make sure of it, Nolan said. He turned his attention back to the boys, deciding it was time to start putting his plan into motion. They were here for a reason, and it was time to begin their training. Naruto, Suzuki, Nolan said, his voice firm but calm. We need to get started with your training. It's important that you both become strong, and you'll need all the skills you can get if you are going to help protect Earth. Naruto perked up immediately. Training? I'm ready. I'm gonna get super strong, just wait and see. Suzuki simply nodded, his expression unreadable. But Nolan had a feeling there was a lot more to Suzuki than what was on the surface. He'd trained many warriors in his life, but the quiet ones always took time to open up. Naruto, on the other hand, was an open book full of energy, eager to learn, but also prone to causing chaos if left unchecked. Naruto, Suzuki, Nolan continued, his tone shifting to something more practical. Suzuki, you need to keep an eye on Naruto. He tends to get a bit enthusiastic. Don't let him break anything, okay? Naruto flashed a grin. I can handle it. You'll see I'm gonna be the best. Suzuki, without looking up, gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. I'll make sure he doesn't break anything. Good, Nolan said, nodding in approval before continuing, I want to teach you both something simple but important. It's a basic skill that will help you in ways you can't even imagine right now. We'll start with tree climbing. Naruto's eyes lit up, full of excitement. Tree climbing? That sounds awesome. I've done that before, kind of. He scratched the back of his head, grinning sheepishly. Sasuke's face remained neutral. I've never done it. Nolan gave a small smirk. Well, you're in for a treat then. It's a simple exercise, but it teaches you a lot about control and focus. It's going to help you both get stronger. Here's how it works, you need to use your chakra, or in your case, your inner energy, to stick to the trunk of the tree. It's all about balance and concentration. Naruto immediately stood up, his usual enthusiasm kicking in. All right. I'm gonna climb to the top in no time. Nolan shook his head, a small chuckle escaping him. Not so fast, Naruto. You need to focus. You'll need to get your chakra under control first. Naruto stopped, eyes widening in determination. Okay. Focus. I got this. Sasuke, who had been silently listening, finally stood and walked toward the backyard. I'll give it a try, he said quietly, looking at the large tree in the yard. Good. You two can start now, Nolan said, his voice calm but authoritative. I'll be back shortly. We'll talk more about your training later. I need to get some rest. Don't mess around while I'm gone. Naruto immediately dashed to the tree, attempting to jump onto the trunk. As expected, he missed and fell face first into the grass. Ouch! Okay, that didn't work. Sasuke, however, had already started carefully walking up to the tree, his focus sharp. He attempted to stick to the trunk, his body leaning slightly forward as he focused. Nolan watched from the door, a mix of pride and amusement stirring inside him. Sasuke's quiet determination was obvious, and Naruto's willingness to try again made him proud as well. He just needed to rein in that energy and teach him patience. Debbie appeared in the doorway behind Nolan, concern still written across her face. Are you sure this is the right way? They're just kids. Nolan turned to her, his eyes softening for a moment. They're strong. They just don't know it yet. They'll get there. Debbie hesitated before speaking again. But Mark, what do we do about him? Nolan looked at her, his gaze intense. We give him time. And when he's ready to come back, he will. But for now, we need to keep moving forward. The world won't wait for us to sort out our feelings. As Nolan turned to leave for the stairs, he glanced one last time at Naruto and Sasuke, who were now working together on the tree climbing technique. Sasuke was silent, focused, and determined. Naruto, of course, was struggling a bit, but his energy was infectious. Naruto's energy will be useful, Nolan thought as he made his way upstairs. We just need to teach them the right way to channel it. And with that, Nolan closed the door behind him, leaving the kids to their training. But in the quiet of the house, one thing was certain, no matter what happened with Mark or the Viltrumites, Nolan would see this through. He had a mission to accomplish. Chapter 8, The Scrolls of Power. Nolan lay in bed, the weight of everything still pressing on his mind. His conversation with Mark earlier kept playing in his head, over and over again. But he couldn't afford to focus on that now. The future was uncertain, and Mark needed time. He had his own plans, and so did Nolan. The training of Naruto and Sasuke was the priority. He closed his eyes for a moment, but his mind wouldn't quiet. He had already set them on the path of learning the basics, but he knew they would need more. Something more substantial. He wasn't going to risk them being weak, especially if the Viltrumites ever came to Earth in full force. Nolan, you should probably ask the system what it can offer you. The thought came to him naturally, and without hesitation, he activated the system inside his mind. A soft chime filled his head, and a holographic interface appeared before his vision. The system spoke in its usual neutral tone, "You have unlocked the ability to acquire jutsu scrolls. These scrolls contain various techniques that can be taught to others. However, you must train the individuals and use chakra to help them unlock the abilities in the scrolls." Nolan furrowed his brow, thinking, "Jutsu scrolls? That sounds promising. What do I have to do to acquire one?" To obtain jutsu scrolls, you must exchange your points accumulated through training or combat. The more difficult the technique, the higher the cost. Would you like to browse the available scrolls now? Nolan hesitated for a moment. Yes, let me see what you have. The system presented a list of scrolls, each one more impressive than the last. Techniques from the Naruto world, some basic, others requiring immense control and skill. After scanning through the options, Nolan's mind was set. He selected 2 scrolls, knowing they were the perfect fit for Naruto and Sasuke. A Raise Nan scroll for Naruto, and a Chidori scroll for Sasuke. Both were iconic techniques, demanding intense training but capable of immense power once mastered. The system processed the request. The Raise Nan scroll has been acquired. The Chidori scroll has been acquired. You may now begin teaching these techniques. Nolan nodded, satisfied. He had enough experience with these techniques to understand their complexity. But now, it was about more than just the moves themselves, it was about how to teach these boys to harness their potential. Naruto will need patience and focus, Nolan thought, already imagining how he would explain the Rasengan's concept to him. Sasuke's more reserved, but that might work to his advantage with the Chidori. The system chimed again. Would you like to instruct the boys now or wait until morning? Nolan was already exhausted from the day, from the mental strain of dealing with everything Mark, the Viltrumites, the tension in the air, but he knew he couldn't wait. Training would continue. I'll wait until tomorrow. Let them sleep. It's important that they rest before we push them to their limits. The system acknowledged with a soft ping. Very well. The boys will need ample energy for the training ahead. Good night, Nolan. With a deep sigh, Nolan settled back into his bed. As his eyes closed, his mind raced with thoughts of the training to come. He knew it wasn't going to be easy. Raise Nan and Chidori were advanced techniques, but with the right guidance, they would learn. He would make sure of it. The next morning, Nolan was up early, ready to begin. He made his way downstairs to find Sasuke and Naruto already awake and in the kitchen with Debbie, who was making breakfast. Good morning, boys, Nolan greeted them as he entered the room, his tone calm and commanding. I've got something special for you today. It's time to step up your training. Naruto's eyes sparkled with excitement. What's the special thing, hey? What are we doing today? Sasuke gave him a small glance but remained silent, his usual stoic self. I've got some techniques I want to teach you both, Nolan said. They're powerful, but they won't be easy to learn. Naruto, I've got a scroll here with a technique called the Raise Nan. It's a concentrated ball of chakra that you can launch at an opponent. Sasuke, for you, I've got the Chidori. It's a lightning-charged thrust, and it requires a great deal of speed and precision. Naruto jumped up excitedly. A Raise Nan. That sounds awesome. I'm gonna master it in no time. Sasuke's expression remained unreadable, but there was a flicker of interest in his eyes. And you think we're ready for something like this? Nolan nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. You're both more than ready. You just need to train hard and focus. I'll help you every step of the way, but you need to commit yourselves to this. He handed them each a scroll, watching as Naruto's face lit up with joy and Sasuke took the scroll more seriously. The weight of the task ahead was obvious in his demeanor, but Nolan had no doubt Sasuke would rise to the challenge. "All right," Nolan said, clapping his hands together. "Let's get started. We'll begin with basic chakra control first. Once you've got that down, we can move on to the real training. But this won't be easy. You'll need to focus." Naruto immediately jumped into action, rushing toward the backyard. Sasuke followed, his steps more measured but just as determined. Debbie watched them leave the house, her expression soft but filled with concern. "Are you sure about this, Nolan? They're just kids. You're pushing them into something dangerous." Nolan turned to her, his eyes filled with resolve. "They'll be fine. They need to be strong. And I won't let them fail." With that, Nolan followed them outside, ready to guide the boys through the first steps of their training. Chapter 9, The Talk with Mark. Nolan stood in the doorway of the kitchen, watching as Sasuke and Naruto practiced with the Raise Nan and Chidori scrolls outside. The sound of their training filled the air, but Nolan's mind was elsewhere. His thoughts kept circling back to Mark. It had been hours since he stormed out of the house, and Nolan knew he couldn't let this sit for much longer. Mark needed to hear the truth, or at least the part of it Nolan was willing to share. He turned to Debbie, who was sitting at the kitchen table, still clearly worried. "Debbie," he started, his voice soft but firm, "I'm going to go find Mark." She looked up from her coffee, eyes wide with concern. "Nolan, you think that's a good idea? He's really upset, and you haven't exactly been honest with him." "He might not." "I know," Nolan interrupted, his expression serious. "But I need to talk to him. We need to clear the air. He's my son, Debbie. I won't let this go on much longer." Debbie exhaled heavily, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. "I understand, but just, be careful. You know how he can get." Nolan nodded, then turned and walked toward the door, his mind made up. It was time to face Mark. The cool night air hit Nolan's face as he flew through the sky, his thoughts racing. Mark had been distant ever since the conversation about the Viltrumites. Nolan had been trying to protect him, trying to shield him from the harsh truth of what being a Viltrumite really meant. But Mark deserved to know, even if it meant breaking the fragile bond they had. The city came into view, and Nolan spotted Mark's familiar silhouette sitting atop a tall building, looking down at the streets below. He landed quietly beside him, his boots making barely a sound as he touched down. Mark didn't immediately turn around. He kept his gaze fixed ahead, his fists clenched at his sides. Nolan knew the tension between them was thick. "You're not going to say anything, are you?" Mark's voice was low, angry, but there was an underlying hurt in it. You just want me to accept everything, right? All those lies, everything you've kept from me." Nolan took a deep breath and sat down beside him, looking out over the city with a heavy heart. "Mark, we need to talk. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I've kept a lot of things from you. Things I didn't want you to know." Mark's eyes flashed with bitterness. "You mean things like how you're really an alien, or how you killed the Guardians of the Globe? Is that the kind of thing you didn't want me to know?" Nolan winced, but he didn't turn away. "Mark, I did what I had to do. The Viltrumites, they have a mission. And I've been trying to protect you from the truth about it. But I realize now that I can't keep lying to you." Mark's fists clenched tighter, and his voice cracked slightly. "What do you expect me to say, hey? You want me to forgive you for everything? To just accept the fact that you've been killing people in the name of some alien empire?" Nolan's gaze softened, but his voice remained firm. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mark. I'm telling you that I've made mistakes, that I've been wrong about a lot of things. But I want to fix it. And I can't do that if we keep living this lie." Mark was quiet for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. Finally, he spoke, his voice quieter, more uncertain. So what now, Dad? What happens next? You're just going to leave everything behind. Nolan swallowed hard. This was the moment he'd been avoiding, the moment he knew would change everything. I'm quitting being a superhero, Mark, Nolan said, his voice steady but with a hint of regret. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending to be the hero, fighting for something that doesn't align with who I really am anymore. Mark's head snapped around to look at him, his eyes wide with disbelief. What? You're quitting? But you've been fighting for Earth your whole life. What do you mean, quitting? Nolan took a deep breath and faced his son. I've been part of the Viltrumite Empire for far too long. But I can't be a part of their mission anymore. It's not right. I've seen what it does to people, to planets. And Earth. Earth deserves better. You deserve better. Mark's jaw tightened. So you're just going to walk away from everything? From being a hero, from being my dad? Nolan lowered his gaze. I've already done enough damage, Mark. I can't keep putting this burden on you. You're right to be angry with me, and I don't blame you. I've lied to you, I've betrayed you. And I need to make things right. Mark shook his head, clearly struggling to process it all. So what, you're just giving up? You're just going to leave Earth to defend itself? I'm not giving up, Nolan said, his voice softer now. I'm going to train others. I'm going to train people who can protect this planet, people who aren't bound by the lies of the Viltrumites. I've already started with Naruto and Sasuke. They're strong, and they're going to help protect this world. Mark's expression faltered, the anger in his eyes shifting to confusion. You're training kids now? That's your answer? To just walk away from everything and teach them to fight? Nolan met his son's gaze. Yes, Mark. That's my answer. I don't want to be the villain anymore. I don't want to be a part of an empire that conquers planets. I want to help Earth in the way it deserves. And if that means stepping back and letting others take the lead, then that's what I'll do. Mark didn't respond at first, his eyes flicking between his father and the city below them. Finally, he let out a deep breath. I don't know if I can forgive you for everything you've done, Dad. But I'll try. I don't want to lose you. Nolan's heart clenched, but he knew this was just the first step. There was a long road ahead. You won't lose me, Mark, Nolan said softly. I'm still your father. And I'll always be here. They sat in silence for a while, neither of them knowing what to say next. The city stretched out before them, and for the first time in a long time, Nolan felt like maybe, just maybe, he was doing the right thing. Chapter 10, New Beginnings. The flight back home was quiet, the weight of the conversation between Nolan and Mark still lingering between them. Mark hadn't said much after Nolan told him about quitting the superhero life, but Nolan could feel the tension in the air. It wasn't the end of their struggle, but it was the beginning of something different. Something new. As they landed back at the house, Nolan could see Naruto and Sasuke still training outside. Their movements were less erratic than before, each boy slowly getting the hang of their respective techniques. Sasuke was focused, his Chidori practice more precise with each attempt, while Naruto, true to his nature, was constantly trying to perfect the Raise-Nan, even if it meant a little more mess than expected. Mark watched them for a moment, still processing everything Nolan had said. So, what now? Mark finally asked, his voice quieter than usual. We go inside and talk to Debbie, Nolan said with a tired sigh. Tell her everything's going to be okay. We've got a lot of changes ahead. Inside the house, Debbie was sitting at the kitchen table, her worried expression softening when she saw them walk through the door. How did it go? She asked, standing up and moving toward them. Nolan gave her a reassuring smile. It went well. We talked, and Mark understands. It's not going to be easy, but we'll make it work. Mark nodded slowly, still processing Nolan's words, but he was calmer now. Yeah, it's a lot to take in, but I get it. You're not the villain. You're just trying to do better, right? Nolan clapped him on the shoulder. Exactly. And it's not just about me anymore. It's about all of us. Earth. The future. Debbie nodded, though there was still a flicker of doubt in her eyes. So, what's next, then? Nolan turned to Naruto and Sasuke, who had followed them into the house, eager but still unsure of what was going on. Boys, Nolan called out, his voice warm, I need you both to do something for me. Naruto bounced up and down, excited as always. What is it? What is it? Tell me. Sasuke, Naruto, Nolan said, glancing at both of them, I want you to call Mark Big Brother from now on. He's part of this family, and I think it's important that we all stick together. Naruto immediately grinned, practically bouncing on his feet. Big Brother? All right, that sounds awesome. Hey, Big Brother Mark. He said, looking up at Mark with that typical Naruto enthusiasm. Sasuke, on the other hand, remained stoic, his eyes flicking between Nolan and Mark. He didn't say anything at first, but after a long moment, he spoke in his usual calm manner. Big Brother Mark, Sasuke said, his tone barely above a whisper, but enough to acknowledge the shift. It was something. Mark blinked at the sudden change in dynamics, but he couldn't help the small smile that tugged at his lips. I guess that's me now, hey. He said, trying to keep it light but clearly feeling a little awkward. Still, it was a step forward. Nolan nodded approvingly, then turned to Debbie. Everything's fine now, Debbie, he said, walking over to her and taking her hand. I've been thinking. I'm going to start a construction company. I'll use the money to help train the boys and make sure they have what they need to be ready for whatever comes. But I won't be a hero anymore. That part of my life is over. Debbie's eyes widened in surprise. A construction company? Nolan, that's a big change. I know, Nolan said, smiling. But I think it's the right one. I've been running from the truth for so long, and I can't keep doing it. I want to build something that lasts, something that's real. And I'll still help Earth if the Viltrumites come. But I won't be a superhero anymore. Not the way I was. Mark watched the conversation unfold, and he could see how much his father was trying to change. It wasn't just for him, it was for everyone. And that gave Mark a little bit of peace, even though he still had questions about where they were headed. I guess that makes sense, Mark said quietly. If you're not going to be a superhero, then what does that make me? Nolan turned to face him, his gaze steady. That makes you, whatever you choose to be. But no matter what, you don't have to carry the weight I did. I'm here, and I'll help you. We'll figure it out together. Naruto's voice broke the silence. Hey! When do we start the next training lesson? I wanna get stronger and learn more cool stuff. Sasuke nodded, his eyes focused on Nolan. I've been practicing the Chidori. I want to learn more. Nolan smiled at the boys, then turned back to Debbie. We'll start training tomorrow, but first, let's all get some rest. I've got a lot of work ahead of me setting up the company, training you two, and making sure everything's in place for the future. But for now, we can enjoy a moment of peace. Debbie smiled, a relieved expression on her face. All right, Nolan. If you're sure this is the right choice, I'm with you. I've always been. Thanks, Debbie, Nolan said, squeezing her hand. I couldn't do this without you. As the evening wore on, the family settled into a new rhythm. Mark, despite his lingering uncertainty, felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The conversation had been tough, but it was a step in the right direction. Nolan had made his choice, and Mark had made his peace with it, even if he didn't fully understand it all yet. And for the first time in a long while, Nolan felt like he was on the right path. The future was uncertain, but he had a plan and he would do everything in his power to protect Earth, no matter what it took. Chapter 11, New Beginnings and New Allies. The morning air was crisp as Nolan made his way through the streets to the local business office. The paperwork was simple, but the decision behind it felt monumental. Grayson Construction, he muttered to himself, reading the name printed on the documents in front of him. It felt like a step into a completely new life, and in many ways, it was. After signing the final forms, Nolan stood up from the desk and shook the hand of the clerk. "Thank you. This is just the beginning." As he stepped out into the bustling city, Nolan felt a sense of clarity. This was his future now, not being a superhero, not being a part of the Viltrumite Empire. This was something real, something grounded. A chance for a fresh start. Later that day, as Nolan was heading back home, he felt a familiar presence enter his mind. It was a ping, something he had come to recognize as the system's prompt. But before he could even contemplate what it might be, he heard a soft whoosh from above. Descending from the sky, Nolan landed softly outside the front door of his home. A black car was parked in the driveway, and standing in front of it, with his arms crossed, was none other than Cecil Stedman. "Grayson," Cecil said, glancing at the sign in Nolan's hand. "I heard you were opening up a construction company. Interesting move. I figured you'd be going back to your old ways, but..." Nolan waved a hand dismissively, walking past Cecil. "I'm not going back to that life, Cecil. I've made my choice. No more playing hero. No more fighting for a dying empire." Cecil nodded, his expression unreadable. "I get it. I heard what happened, by the way. You told Mark the truth about the Viltrumites. Earth's not in immediate danger, but you've still got a lot to explain. The Viltrumites are far from a peaceful race." Nolan paused at the door, looking back over his shoulder. "That's true. The Viltrumites are a warlike species. I told Mark what I could, but there's still a lot he doesn't understand." He glanced at the sky for a moment, as if reflecting on the past. "I'm just a mid-tier soldier, Cecil. I've had my orders, but I've never been in the same league as Conquest or Thag. Those two are the real powerhouses in the Empire." Cecil nodded again, his face serious. "I need more information, Nolan. If the Viltrumites ever make a move on Earth again, we have to be prepared. I can't do this with just half the story." Nolan frowned but agreed. "I'll tell you what I can. Conquest is a brutal one. He was my superior, and he's one of the Empire's most feared warriors. He's the type to crush anything in his path without hesitation. Thag, though, he's got a more strategic mind. He operates with cunning and manipulation, something that makes him just as dangerous. If the Viltrumites attack again, those two will likely lead the charge." Cecil processed the information, his mind already working on the next steps. "Thanks, Nolan. I know you're not in the business of saving Earth anymore, but if you change your mind, if you decide you want to help us protect it, let me know. You might be done with the Viltrumites, but I know you're still a force to be reckoned with." "I'll help if I have to," Nolan replied, his voice colder now, "but don't expect me to be anyone's hero. I'm done with that." With that, Nolan turned and walked into the house, leaving Cecil to his thoughts. As Nolan stepped inside, the familiar warmth of home greeted him. He paused for a moment, scanning the living room where Mark was sitting, talking with Sasuke and Naruto. It had been a strange few days, but at least things were starting to feel normal again. The boys seemed happy, and that brought a sense of peace Nolan hadn't felt in years. But just as he was about to go upstairs, a new ping echoed in his mind. It was another summoning prompt. System alert, new summoning available. Nolan's eyes narrowed as the familiar blue screen materialized before him. New summoning, Itaki Uchiha requirements, none. Current status, summon available. Without hesitation, Nolan focused on the prompt and accepted the summoning. The world around him seemed to shimmer for a moment, and then, standing in front of him, was none other than Itaki Uchiha, the skilled and mysterious shinobi from the Naruto universe. Itaki glanced around, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. He stood still, his expression unreadable, before his gaze fell on Nolan. "You summoned me," Itaki said, his voice calm but carrying an air of authority. "What is it that you require?" Nolan took a moment to study the Uchiha clan's prodigy. Itaki was a powerful figure, and Nolan had no doubts about his abilities. "You're going to stay with us," Nolan said. "I'm adopting you as my son. You'll train with the others, and I'll help you become stronger." Itaki blinked, clearly unfazed by the abruptness of the situation, but he nodded, accepting the new circumstances. "Very well," he said simply. "I'll trust your judgment." Nolan then motioned for Itaki to follow him inside. The boys were still sitting at the table, but when they saw Nolan walk in with Itaki, they looked up, curiosity written across their faces. Who's this?" Naruto asked, tilting his head. "Another brother." "Yes," Nolan said with a slight smile. "This is Itaki. He's going to be your older brother, just like Mark." Naruto immediately brightened. "An older brother? Cool. Hey, Itaki, do you know any awesome jutsu?" Sasuke, always more reserved, simply nodded to Itaki, acknowledging his presence. Mark, sitting at the table, watched with a small smile as the boys interacted. He felt a strange warmth as he looked at his little brothers. Despite everything that had happened, despite the lies, the confusion, and the pain, it was clear that this was his new family. And, despite his lingering uncertainties, Mark couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. That evening, the family gathered around the dinner table, the clinking of silverware and the soft chatter filling the room. For the first time in a long while, Nolan felt like he was doing the right thing. They were a family now, not just by blood, but by choice. As they ate, Naruto, Sasuke, and Itaki began to bond in their own way, and Nolan finally allowed himself to believe that, maybe, things could be okay again. Chapter 12, Family Ties and Future Plans. As the dinner dishes were cleared, Nolan led Itaki into the living room where the rest of the boys were sitting. Sasuke's eyes immediately locked onto his older brother, and for a moment, there was only silence. Itaki stood still, observing Sasuke, his eyes softening just slightly in recognition. It was a surreal moment, one that would have seemed impossible just days ago. But there they were, Itaki and Sasuke, brothers once more, albeit under different circumstances. Nolan sat down across from Sasuke, looking directly at him. "Sasuke," he said gently, "there's something you need to know about this Itaki." Sasuke furrowed his brow, unsure of what Nolan was about to say. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice quiet but curious. Nolan leaned forward, his tone serious. "This Itaki," he said, "is the same brother you remember, the one who killed the Uchiha clan. But there's something you may not have known. Itaki was manipulated by the third Hokage. His actions weren't entirely his own choice. He was used in a game that he didn't want to play." Sasuke stared at Itaki, disbelief written all over his face. "You're telling me that this Itaki, the one who slaughtered our clan, wasn't the same as the one I remember?" Nolan nodded slowly. "Exactly. This Itaki is the brother you knew, the caring, strong older brother from your memories. He was a victim of the village's politics and manipulation. The Itaki you knew is still in there." Sasuke was quiet for a long time, his eyes searching Itaka's face as if looking for some sign, some trace of the man he had once called family. Finally, he spoke, his voice softer. I thought it was just someone who looked like him. I never thought he'd really be here. Itaka gave Sasuke a small, acknowledging nod. I am the brother you remember. I've made my mistakes, but I'm here now. And I will protect you, Sasuke. Sasuke stood up, his expression still conflicted but softer now. I understand. But it's still hard to believe. Nolan smiled, placing a hand on Sasuke's shoulder. It's okay. Take your time. He's not going anywhere. The mood shifted as the evening wore on. Mark, Naruto, Sasuke, and Itaka went downstairs to the recreation room, where a ping-pong table was set up. The boys immediately jumped into a game, Naruto's energy infectious as always. Itaka, despite his stoic nature, joined in quietly, displaying a surprising amount of finesse with the paddle. Sasuke played with a bit more seriousness, but even he couldn't hide the small smile that tugged at his lips when Naruto made a particularly wild shot. Mark leaned against the wall, watching the scene unfold. He was used to it being just him and Nolan, but now there was a feeling of camaraderie in the air. Despite everything that had happened, it felt good to be surrounded by his brothers. They weren't just some strange addition to the family, they were real. And they were his. After a while, Nolan called them all over to the table. All right, enough games for tonight, he said, his voice carrying authority, but with a warmth that made the boys pause. Tomorrow, we need to start training and working. I'm not sure how long I can keep my head down with the Viltrumites, but I'll make sure you all are ready for anything that comes our way. Mark nodded, his expression serious. I understand, Dad. Naruto jumped up, excited. Training. Yes. I'm ready to become the strongest ninja. Sasuke, though more reserved, said, I'll do my best. Itaka simply nodded, his usual quiet demeanor returning. I'll do what I can. Nolan smiled, satisfied with their responses. Good. Now, go get some rest. We'll start early tomorrow. I'll be in the shower and then to bed. As the boys left to head upstairs, Nolan made his way to the bathroom, letting the hot water wash away the tension of the day. It had been a long journey filled with confusion, pain, and difficult choices, but for the first time in a while, Nolan felt like he was moving toward something solid. Something meaningful. Later, as Nolan lay in bed, the soft sound of the wind outside was the only noise in the room. He closed his eyes, his mind still processing everything that had happened. Then, he heard a soft knock at the door. Come in, Nolan called, not surprised when Debbie entered the room. She sat down on the edge of the bed, her expression tired but thoughtful. Nolan, she said quietly, is everything going to be all right? Nolan reached out, taking her hand in his. I told Cecil everything about the Viltrumites, so he knows what to expect. I think Earth is safe for now. But, if they ever come back, I'll be ready. We'll be ready. Debbie sighed, her head resting on his shoulder. I want things to be normal. I want us to be a family, and I don't want to keep living in fear. Nolan kissed her forehead, reassuring her as best as he could. We'll make it through. I've made my choice, and we'll build something better. I'll keep you and the boys safe, no matter what. She smiled softly, comforted by his words. I believe you. As Nolan closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep, a part of him felt lighter. It wasn't all figured out yet, but for the first time in years, he had a sense of purpose again. A family, a future, and the promise that, whatever came their way, they would face it together. Chapter 13, Renovation and Surprises. The sun rose over the horizon, casting a warm glow on the house as Nolan stood outside, looking at the property. He had made a decision. It was time for the house to reflect the new life they were building. Too many people, too many plans, everything was about to change. All right, guys. Nolan called to the boys, who had just finished their breakfast and were standing around in the living room. We're renovating the house. We need more space for everyone, so we're gonna make a few adjustments. Mark, Naruto, Sasuke, and Itachi exchanged curious glances. Renovating? Mark asked, slightly confused. What do you mean? Nolan smiled and gestured around the room. Well, with all of us here now, this place is getting cramped. We need more rooms, more space for everyone to train, to live. I'm going to make sure we've got what we need. Naruto bounced on his feet, his usual enthusiasm apparent. So, what can I do? Can I help? Nolan nodded. Naruto, I want you to use your shadow clones. I need you to dig out the foundation for the new rooms. There may be rocks in the way, so Mark can help you break up any big ones. Naruto grinned, eager to get started. All right. I'll make hundreds of clones. We'll get it done in no time. Itachi, Sasuke, Nolan continued, I want you to use your clones to help in the areas that need more fine-tuning. There's a lot of space to cover, and I'll be here to supervise. Itachi nodded quietly, while Sasuke simply acknowledged the plan with a slight tilt of his head. Good, Nolan said, stepping back to observe. I'll watch everything. If you need anything, just call for me. As the boys started working outside, Nolan stood near the porch, keeping an eye on them as they worked. Naruto's clones were digging away furiously, while Mark helped break up large boulders in the yard. Itachi and Sasuke were busy working on the finer details of the construction, carefully placing wood beams and measuring spaces with precision. Nolan was proud of them. It felt like a family, working together towards something bigger than themselves. But the peaceful moment was soon interrupted by a voice calling from behind him. Nolan. Debbie's voice was sharp, yet filled with disbelief. Nolan turned to see her standing at the door, her arms crossed. Yes. Debbie raised an eyebrow. Who's paying for all this? The materials, the labor, the whole thing. You really think we can afford this? Nolan smiled slightly, stepping closer to her. Actually, Cecil offered me a deal. He's paying me $100 million every year that I stay on Earth. That includes everything: the house renovations, training, and if any Viltrumites ever attack, I'll get paid more. Debbie blinked, shocked by the number. $100 million a year. She repeated, her voice incredulous. Are you serious? Yep, Nolan said casually, though his tone remained steady. Cecil wants Earth to be protected, and he knows that I'm the only one who can help if the Viltrumites show up again. It's a deal that benefits us all. Mark, who had been standing nearby, overheard the conversation and walked over, his jaw slightly dropped. $100 million. He echoed. That's insane. I didn't think anyone made that much money just to stay on Earth. Nolan shrugged. It's not about the money, Mark. It's about making sure we're prepared. If the Viltrumites come back, we'll be ready for them. The money's just the way it works. Itachi, Sasuke, and Naruto didn't react much to the conversation. They didn't quite understand the value of money in this world, not like Mark and Debbie did. To them, the concept was still foreign, just another piece of the strange world they had been brought into. Naruto, ever energetic, glanced at Sasuke and said, 100 million? That's so much. I could buy lots of ramen with that. Sasuke simply rolled his eyes but couldn't hide the slight quirk of his lips. You're thinking too small, Naruto. Itachi, in his usual quiet manner, didn't say anything but looked at Nolan with a faint understanding. He knew that money was important in this world, but his focus was more on the training and the future, on the promises Nolan had made to protect them all. Debbie stood there for a moment, processing the information. I'm just surprised. I never imagined we'd be living like this. It's so different from what I thought our life would be. Nolan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I know, Debbie. But everything is changing now. We've got a new life, a new purpose. And I'm not going anywhere. We'll make sure everything works out. Debbie smiled, her worries momentarily set aside. I hope so. With the discussion over, Nolan turned back to the work being done outside. The boys were making good progress. Naruto's clones were rapidly digging up the foundation, while Sasuke and Itachi handled the intricate work inside. Mark had finished breaking up the large rocks and was helping Naruto carry them off to a designated pile. Nolan watched with pride as his new family worked together. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but it was theirs. They were building something, not just for the future, but for themselves, a future where they could protect Earth and, most importantly, each other. Later that evening, after a long day of work, Nolan looked over at the progress they'd made. The house was slowly being transformed, and the boys had put in a solid effort. They were getting stronger, and their bond was growing. It was a feeling Nolan hadn't had in years, a sense of hope, of purpose. As the sun began to set, Nolan called everyone inside for dinner. The air was cool now, the work for the day done, and they could finally relax. Good work today, guys, Nolan said with a smile, as they all sat down at the table. Tomorrow, we get back at it, but for now, let's eat. The family gathered around the table, a simple meal laid out before them. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Together, they ate and laughed, the sounds of their voices filling the house. And for Nolan, for the first time in a long time, things felt like they might just turn out okay. Chapter 14, A Day at the Amusement Park. The following day dawned bright and clear, the sun casting a golden glow on the freshly renovated house. It had been a busy morning, but by lunch, Nolan and the boys had completed the majority of the work. The house was looking good, more space for everyone, with enough room for training and play. All right, guys, Nolan said as he looked around at the completed renovations. We did good. You all worked hard. Naruto, still buzzing with energy, grinned. I feel like I could have built the whole house myself. The clones were awesome. Sasuke gave him a side glance but didn't respond. Instead, he looked over at Itachi, who simply nodded in approval. Itachi had been quieter, observing the boys' interactions and trying to adapt to this new life with the Graysons. Debbie came out from the kitchen, holding a phone. Nolan, I ordered us some lunch. It should be here soon. Perfect, Nolan replied, smiling. After lunch, I think we could all use a break. How about a trip to the amusement park? Mark, who had been quietly observing his family, lit up at the suggestion. That sounds awesome. I haven't been to one in ages. Good. Let's make it a family day, Nolan said. But Mark, if you want to meet up with your friends, you can. It's your day too. Mark paused, glancing over at Nolan with a thoughtful look. You're sure? Nolan nodded. Yeah. Just have fun, Mark. We'll be here if you need us. The lunch arrived just in time, and after everyone ate, Nolan led the family out the door. Mark grabbed his jacket and immediately left to find his friends. Naruto and Sasuke followed closely behind, eager to explore, while Itachi stayed a little farther behind, his ever-present calm aura blending with the chaos around him. The amusement park was lively, filled with sounds of laughter and the smell of popcorn, cotton candy, and fried food. Children ran past them, some screaming with excitement while others clutched tickets and maps. It was a different kind of energy from what they had been used to. This was Earth at its most joyful and carefree. All right, Naruto, Sasuke, and Itachi, Nolan said, looking down at the trio of boys. We're going to have some fun today. But if you need anything, just let me know. Debbie gave them a reassuring smile. Go ahead, enjoy yourselves. We'll be watching. Naruto, always the more enthusiastic of the group, immediately ran towards the nearest roller coaster. I'm gonna ride this first, he yelled, jumping up and down. Sasuke's expression was neutral, but he followed Naruto with a resigned look. Do I have to ride that thing? It's the best. Naruto said with excitement, you'll love it. Itachi, as expected, was quiet, but his gaze followed his younger brothers. I'll keep an eye on them, he said to Nolan, his voice calm. Nolan nodded, satisfied. Thanks, Itachi. We'll just be over here watching. Debbie and Nolan found a nearby bench, settled in, and watched as Naruto dragged Sasuke onto the roller coaster. Itachi stood nearby, his eyes on them, ensuring that they were safe and having fun. As they settled down to enjoy the snacks Nolan had bought cotton candy and bags of popcorn, Mark appeared again, but this time he wasn't alone. He was with his friends William, Amber, and Eve. He waved at Nolan, and his friends followed him over to where they were sitting. Hey, Dad, Mark said casually, taking a seat beside Nolan. I ran into William, Amber, and Eve. They're here too. Nolan smiled warmly at Mark and nodded. That's fine. You can hang out with them. We're just here to relax. William, ever curious, grinned. So, what's the deal with the new family? I saw you with them before. They're all different. What's going on? Mark hesitated, but Eve stepped in before he could say anything. It's fine, William. Mark has his own life. Let him enjoy the day. William looked between them, but after a moment, he shrugged. All right. Just checking. Nolan, watching the interaction, spoke up. Mark, if you want to stay with your friends, go ahead. We're not going anywhere. Mark smiled, clearly relieved. Thanks, Dad. I think I'll hang with them for a while. I'll come find you guys later. Naruto, meanwhile, had already dragged Sasuke onto a Ferris wheel, both of them looking a bit nervous but excited. Itachi, following them, stayed close to make sure nothing went wrong. I didn't think Naruto would go for that, Debbie said, amused, as she watched the boys. But Sasuke seems like he's enjoying it. Nolan chuckled. I think Naruto's enthusiasm is contagious. They're good kids. The rest of the day was filled with excitement, the sounds of children's laughter, and the rush of rides. Naruto was the most active, racing from one ride to the next, while Sasuke followed reluctantly but seemed to enjoy himself more than he'd admit. Itachi was quiet, watching over them all, and Nolan found a quiet satisfaction in seeing his new family members finding joy in something so simple. Mark, for his part, had a good time with his friends. They spent the afternoon riding the attractions, getting snacks, and chatting, but Nolan could tell Mark was more relaxed around them, even if he still kept some distance. As the day came to a close and the sun began to set, Nolan and Debbie waited at the entrance of the park. Mark waved his friends goodbye and walked over to them, a big smile on his face. Thanks, Dad. I needed that, Mark said as he approached. It was nice to just be normal for a bit. Nolan smiled. Glad you had fun, Mark. Let's head home. We've got a lot of work to do tomorrow. As they all headed back to the car, the atmosphere was light and happy. The day had been a success, a much-needed break for everyone. Even Itachi, Naruto, and Sasuke seemed to have enjoyed themselves, despite their initial hesitations. It was a simple moment, but it felt like a small piece of peace in the otherwise chaotic world they lived in. Chapter 15, Ramen and Revelations. The amusement park had been a success, but the day wasn't over yet. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Nolan suggested they stop for dinner before heading home. The kids were tired but still full of energy, chattering excitedly as they piled into the car. Mark had his arm draped over the shoulders of his younger brothers, Naruto and Sasuke, who were still hyped from the rides. "We're stopping at a restaurant on the way back," Nolan said, looking at the rearview mirror where Mark and the boys were sitting. "Everyone's hungry, right?" "Definitely," Naruto exclaimed, bouncing in his seat. "I want ramen." "A lot of ramen." Nolan raised an eyebrow, glancing at him through the mirror. "Ramen, hey? How much ramen are we talking about?" Naruto's face lit up as he pointed at the menu on the wall of the restaurant they were pulling into. 50 bowls of ramen. That's how much?" Mark groaned from the back seat. 50 bowls? That's too much, Naruto. Naruto just shrugged, his usual grin spreading across his face. "Nah, I can eat all of it. I've got a huge appetite." Mark shook his head in disbelief. "There's no way you can eat that much. I mean, I love ramen, but 50 bowls is just insane." Nolan chuckled, pulling the car into a parking space. "If Naruto can't finish them, we'll just order more for him to take home. He's got an appetite, that's for sure." Naruto's eyes sparkled. "See? Dad gets it." Once they entered the restaurant, the group found a booth in the corner. Naruto immediately leaned over the menu, scanning it with intense focus. He didn't even look up when the waitress came to take their orders. "What can I get for you all today?" the waitress asked, her smile wide. "I'll have the beef donbari," Nolan said, looking at the menu. "And a side of miso soup." Debbie ordered the chicken teriyaki, and Mark chose the pork cutlet bowl. Itachi, Sasuke, and Naruto were next, and the moment the waitress reached them, Naruto jumped up, pointing eagerly at the ramen section of the menu. "I'll have 50 bowls of ramen, please," he declared proudly. The waitress blinked, unsure if she'd heard him correctly. 50? she asked, looking from Naruto to Nolan, then back at the menu. 50 bowls? Are you sure? Yep. Naruto said confidently, not even batting an eye. 50 bowls of ramen. Mark sighed, shaking his head. Naruto, seriously, you're not gonna finish that. Just order a few bowls. Nolan raised his hand to interrupt. It's fine. If he can't finish them, we'll just take the rest to go. Naruto grinned, proud of his plan. I'll eat all of them, no problem. The waitress, still slightly confused, nodded slowly. All right, 50 bowls of ramen. Anything else? Just bring us what we ordered, Nolan said with a smile, watching as the waitress wrote it all down. And bring us a few appetizers too. As the waitress walked off to place their order, Naruto turned to the others, excitement radiating from him. I'm gonna beat this challenge, no problem. You guys don't understand, I'm a ramen expert. Sasuke, who had been quiet the entire time, finally spoke up. This should be interesting. Itachi, ever calm, simply gave a small smile. I'm sure you can handle it, Naruto. The table settled into an easy conversation as they waited for their food. The atmosphere was warm and relaxed, and for the first time in a long time, Nolan felt like they were just a regular family, enjoying a simple meal together. Soon, the food arrived, plates filled with steaming hot dishes. The ramen, of course, was the main attraction. Naruto's 50 bowls of ramen were delivered in stages, with the waitress carefully balancing them on a large tray, looking slightly overwhelmed. Mark stared in disbelief as she set down bowl after bowl of ramen in front of Naruto. I still can't believe you're actually going to eat all of this. Naruto, with a wide grin, dug in without hesitation. I'll show you. I've got this. Debbie watched the scene, shaking her head in amusement. I'm not sure whether to be impressed or concerned. The family ate together, enjoying their food and each other's company. Itaki and Suzuki, though still somewhat reserved, were starting to adjust to the warmth of the Grayson family. Suzuki, in particular, seemed to be opening up more as he ate, exchanging quiet comments with Naruto. Itaki, as always, was observing, his calm demeanor grounding the chaos around him. Naruto, on the other hand, was too focused on his ramen challenge to notice anything else. He was already halfway through his first stack of bowls, slurping loudly with every bite. After a while, Mark couldn't help but ask, "So, how many bowls are you down, Naruto?" Naruto looked up from his ramen, his cheeks stuffed with noodles. I think I'm on number 15. You're barely halfway there," Mark teased, unable to hold back a smile. "I can do it," Naruto said confidently, shoveling another bowl of ramen into his mouth. "I've got this." The rest of the meal was filled with laughter, teasing, and the occasional comment about Naruto's apparent bottomless stomach. But as the last bowl of ramen was brought to the table, the real test began. Naruto, with a determined look on his face, stared down the final bowl. Mark raised an eyebrow. "Think you can finish it?" Naruto paused, spoon halfway to his mouth. "Just wait. I'll finish it, right after this nap," he muttered, slumping slightly in his seat, his stomach clearly full. Nolan couldn't help but laugh. "You're right, you'll finish it later." After the meal, Naruto reluctantly agreed to take the remaining ramen home with him. They paid the bill and left the restaurant, heading back to the car. It had been a long day, but a good one. The boys were exhausted, but they all seemed happier than when they had arrived. As they drove back home, Nolan glanced over at Mark, who was staring out the window, deep in thought. "You okay, Mark?" Mark nodded slowly. "Yeah. Just thinking about everything. About what's coming. I don't know if I can handle it all." Nolan gave him a reassuring look. "You don't have to handle it alone, Mark. We'll get through it together." Debbie smiled, her hand resting gently on Nolan's arm. "We'll always have each other. No matter what." And for the first time in a long time, Nolan felt confident in their new life. The future wasn't certain, but with his family beside him, it didn't seem as daunting as it once had. Chapter 16, Training the Next Generation. The morning sun streamed through the window as Nolan stood outside in the backyard, preparing for another round of training. He glanced over at Naruto, who was already bouncing on the balls of his feet, waiting eagerly. "All right, Naruto," Nolan said with a grin. "We're going to take your shadow clone jutsu to the next level today. I know you're familiar with it, but there's something important I want you to understand about how it works." Naruto's eyes lit up. "Oh? What is it, Dad?" Nolan smirked slightly, looking at the young boy's boundless energy. "When you use your shadow clones, they don't just mimic your movements. They actually absorb everything you do, every technique you perform, every bit of experience you gain. They learn it all and keep it when they disappear. So, the more clones you make, the more you can learn in a short period." Naruto nodded, excited. "So, like, they get the same memories as me?" Nolan gave a short laugh, his gaze softening. "Exactly. They retain everything you've taught them, but the key is that you need to use them wisely. They're great for training, but don't just waste your chakra. Remember to focus, control the flow, and you can turn it into something useful." Naruto's eyes sparkled with understanding. "I get it. It's like having extra me's who can learn stuff without me having to do it all at once." "That's right," Nolan said. "So today, we're going to work on something specific. I want you to use the clones to practice water walking." "Water walking?" Naruto repeated, his enthusiasm undeterred. I can totally do that. You've been teaching me chakra control, and with the clones, I'll get it in no time. Nolan nodded. Exactly. And remember, it's not just about walking on the water, it's about maintaining your chakra flow consistently. It'll be challenging at first, but the more clones you create, the faster you'll learn. Use the clones to help you find your balance. Without wasting any more time, Naruto clapped his hands together, gathering his chakra. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Instantly, a dozen Naruto clones appeared around him, each one grinning with excitement. The original Naruto glanced at Nolan, who gave him an approving nod. All right, Naruto, Nolan said. Get out there and show me what you've got. With the clones in tow, Naruto dashed toward the nearby lake. He was eager to get started, ready to take on this new challenge. He stood at the edge of the water, his clones forming a small crowd around him. Okay, here goes. Naruto shouted, focusing his chakra to the soles of his feet. He then tried to step out onto the surface of the water. At first, he wobbled, his feet sinking into the lake. His clones, however, were doing the same thing, splashing into the water with each failed attempt. Nolan stood back, watching as Naruto's determination only grew stronger. He'd been here before with his own training, and he knew that persistence was the key. After several more attempts, Naruto's expression shifted from frustration to intense concentration. I won't give up. Naruto shouted to himself, clenching his fists. I can do this. He tried again, this time focusing even more on his chakra control. Slowly, he began to feel the tension in the air as his chakra was more evenly distributed. He stepped forward, and this time his foot stayed on the surface, not sinking at all. Yes! I did it! Naruto yelled, pumping his fist into the air. His clones cheered in unison, clapping and shouting their own versions of congratulations. Nolan watched, proud but not surprised. Well done, Naruto! You've got it! Now, make your clones do the same, and keep refining your technique. Naruto's eyes shone with excitement. Okay. Let's do it. He began moving around the lake, water walking with each step. His clones were all copying him, some struggling a bit, but all making steady progress. While Naruto was busy perfecting his water walking technique, Nolan turned his attention to Itachi and Sasuke, who had been quietly watching the training from the porch. Itachi's gaze was sharp, always calculating. Sasuke, on the other hand, looked like he was deep in thought. I've been thinking, Nolan said as he approached them. Sasuke. It's time to start working with your Sharingan. I know it's a sensitive subject, but you have a lot of untapped potential, and I believe it's time to awaken that power. Sasuke tensed slightly, but he didn't look away. I've been trying to unlock it. I've been focusing on my training. But something feels off. Like there's something holding me back. Itachi, who had been silent up until now, spoke quietly. Sasuke, you know the Sharingan requires a strong emotional trigger. The loss of something or someone important. It can be painful, but it's also necessary. Nolan, noticing the tension between the brothers, stepped in. Itachi's right, Sasuke. The Sharingan isn't something you can just force open. But what if the key to unlocking it isn't loss or pain, but trust? Sasuke frowned. Trust. Yes, Nolan said, his tone serious. You've been training on your own, thinking that you have to do everything by yourself. But what if you let someone in? What if you let your brother help you through this? That might be the missing piece. Itachi's expression softened as he placed a hand on Sasuke's shoulder. He's right. You don't have to carry this burden alone, Sasuke. I'm here for you, and so is everyone else. We're all family now. Sasuke looked up at his older brother, his face torn between his pride and the deep-seated pain he carried. Slowly, he nodded. "I'll try. But I still don't understand what I'm supposed to feel." "You don't need to understand all of it right now," Nolan said. "But when you're ready, the Sharingan will unlock. And when it does, you'll be ready to take on whatever comes next." Itaka gave his younger brother an encouraging smile. "We'll work on it together, Sasuke." Sasuke took a deep breath and nodded, feeling a sense of calm settle over him for the first time in a long while. After a few hours, it was clear that Naruto was making incredible progress. His clones were now walking across the water with ease, some even racing each other around the lake. Naruto himself had mastered the technique and was now practicing with speed and agility. "Look, Dad!" Naruto shouted, running across the water at full speed, his clones following suit. "I'm getting faster. Check it out." Nolan smiled. "You're doing great, Naruto. Keep it up." Meanwhile, Itachi and Sasuke were deep in their own training. Sasuke, though still unsure of himself, began trying to focus on his inner thoughts, trying to break through the barrier that had kept his Sharingan dormant. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but he trusted that in time, he would figure it out. Nolan walked over to him, offering a quiet word of encouragement. "You've got this, Sasuke. Don't rush it. When it's ready, you'll know." By the time the sun was beginning to set, the backyard was alive with the sounds of training and laughter. It was a small moment of peace in a world that was always shifting, always changing. And Nolan, watching his sons grow, felt a sense of pride he hadn't felt in a long time. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Nolan felt hopeful. He had his family. And together, they were going to make it through whatever came next. Chapter 17, The Invasion. The sun was just beginning to rise when Nolan finished going over Naruto's progress in water walking. The boy had finally started to get it down, laughing with pride each time he managed to stay balanced on the pond. Sasuke was watching from a distance, quietly analyzing, while Itachi helped Naruto with refining his chakra flow. Everything seemed calm. Until Nolan's phone buzzed. It was Debbie. He answered quickly. "Everything all right?" "No. It's Cecil. He says Earth is under attack. A portal just opened. Some alien force is coming through, and the heroes we have left can't stop them." Her voice cracked. "They're getting overwhelmed." Nolan's eyes narrowed. "Where's the portal?" "Above Manhattan." "And Nolan?" "Cecil says they've already lost half the hero teams. There's no backup." Nolan let out a long breath. "I'm going." He turned to the boys. "Naruto, Sasuke, Itachi, stay here. Keep training. Don't go anywhere." Naruto opened his mouth to ask what was wrong, but Nolan was already in the air, leaving only a sonic boom behind him. The sky above Earth. The portal was massive. Ships and creatures poured through it like an invading swarm, unleashing chaos on the cities below. Fires blazed across rooftops. Screams echoed as alien weapons bombarded the ground. Earth's remaining heroes, already leaderless since Nolan had slaughtered the Guardians, were falling fast. Cecil watched from GDA command, biting his lip. "Where the hell is he?" Just then, a red blur shot through the clouds. Nolan. He arrived in a flash, smashing through an enemy ship and splitting it in two with a punch. His presence alone changed everything. The invaders stopped in midair, confused by the sheer destruction he was causing. The heroes on the ground could only watch. With a growl, Nolan darted through 3 more ships, tearing through steel like it was paper. Aliens screamed as he tore into them, not holding back, not this time. He grabbed one of their massive cruisers, spun in the air, and hurled it back into the portal with such force it exploded on the other side. He was a storm. Within minutes, most of the invading force was either dead or retreating. Nolan didn't stop. He soared straight into the portal into their home world. Cecil stood speechless as the transmission showed Nolan tearing through an entire alien planet's capital. Buildings crumbled, military bases exploded, and their command structure was annihilated before they could even grasp what had happened. Then, just as suddenly as he left, Nolan returned through the portal, which began collapsing behind him. He hovered above the battered heroes of Earth, blood on his fists, smoke rising from his shoulders. Everyone stared in silence. Cecil finally muttered, "He wiped out a planet, alone." Back at home, Nolan landed quietly in the backyard. Naruto and Sasuke rushed to meet him, their eyes wide. "You okay, Dad?" Naruto asked. "Yeah," Nolan said, brushing soot from his uniform. "Just another long day." Sasuke tilted his head. "Did you win?" Nolan didn't answer. He simply nodded and walked inside, the weight of a destroyed world hanging silently on his shoulders. Inside, Debbie was waiting. "Cecil called," she said softly. "He said you saved the planet." Nolan met her gaze. "I had to." There was no pride in his voice. Only the memory of what he'd done to the Guardians, and what he'd now done to another world. Chapter 18, A Full House. The front door creaked open just as the sun was starting to dip below the horizon. Mark stepped in, still wearing his invincible suit, but his helmet was off, his hair tousled and eyes tired. "I'm home," he called softly. He expected silence. Maybe tension. Instead, "Big bro!" Naruto's voice shouted from the hallway as the boy sprinted across the floor and jumped straight into Mark's arms. "You're back. Did you beat any bad guys today?" Mark laughed, catching him. "Only like 4. Sasuke stood nearby with his arms crossed. "He's exaggerating." Itachi, ever calm, nodded toward him. "Welcome home, Mark." Mark blinked, surprised. The mood was so normal. So peaceful. Thanks." Nolan stepped out from the kitchen, no blood, no burns, just a quiet look on his face. "You're back," he said simply. Mark stepped forward, still holding Naruto on his back like a monkey. "Yeah. And I saw the news. You saved the Earth." Nolan nodded. "I did." Mark's eyes met his father's. "You didn't hold back, hey?" "No. Not anymore." There was a beat of silence before Mark smiled. "Good. I'm glad you're finally doing the right thing." Nolan blinked. "You're glad?" Mark set Naruto down. "I've been thinking. You screwed up. Big time. But you're trying now. I see that. I don't know what changed you, but these guys," he gestured to Naruto, Sasuke, and Itachi, "they look up to you. So I'm gonna try too." Nolan didn't expect that. His throat tightened, just for a second. "Thank you, Mark." Debbie appeared with a tray of drinks and a warm smile. "Dinner's almost ready. I made sure to get Naruto's favorite ramen." Naruto shouted, eyes sparkling. "With miso," she confirmed, chuckling. Mark glanced around at the small crowd in the house, his new brothers, his father trying to be better, his mom holding the family together, and for the first time in weeks, he felt peace. As they all gathered around the dinner table, Itachi helped Naruto set the bowls. Sasuke sat next to Mark without a word but with a glance that said he respected him, and Debbie poured drinks with a quiet pride. Nolan sat down last, letting out a rare, deep breath. Mark nudged him with an elbow. "You know, this family's kinda weird now." Nolan smirked. "Yeah. But it feels right." They ate together, laughter echoing through the house. For now, things were good. Chapter 19, Chapter 19, New Arrivals. The sun was barely up when Nolan awoke to the familiar chime in his head. System notification summoning unlocked. You may now summon Minato Namikaze, Academy graduate, Kakashi Hatake, Genin, condition met, established and trained 3 active shinobi. Would you like to summon both? Nolan sat up, rubbing his eyes as the screen lingered in his vision. Yet. Summon both. In a flash of energy that only he could see, 2 small bodies materialized before him standing right at the foot of his bed. Minato looked around curiously, blue eyes calm but alert, messy blonde hair falling over his forehead. He looked about 12. Kakashi, smaller, stood with arms crossed and half his face already hidden by a dark mask, hair as spiky and silver as ever. Where are we? Kakashi asked flatly. Is this a different world? Minato added, voice calmer but curious. Nolan stood, already dressed in his usual black t-shirt and pants. You're in my world now. Earth. I brought you here because I need help protecting it. Did you summon us with a jutsu? Minato asked, intrigued. In a way. Let's just say. I have a system. And I'm looking after a few others like you already. Who? Kakashi asked skeptically. Nolan just smiled. You'll see. Later that morning. Okay, 2 more. Debbie asked, eyes wide as Nolan brought both boys into the living room. They're younger, Nolan explained. But they'll grow fast. They're gifted. Naruto's jaw dropped when he saw Minato. Wait. That's... Sasuke smacked him in the back of the head. Don't scream. Itachi blinked. Is that your father? Naruto stared in awe. Why yet? That's my dad. He's a legend. Minato smiled warmly. Nice to meet you, Naruto. Naruto was frozen, a mix of shock and joy bubbling inside him. Mark walked into the room and stopped mid-step. We got more shinobi. Kakashi nodded toward him with mild curiosity. Big brother. Mark sighed. Please don't start calling me that too. Minato stepped forward, introducing himself to everyone with calm poise, while Kakashi stayed quiet, already observing everything and everyone in the room like a seasoned ANBU despite his age. Nolan knelt to their level. I'll train you all. But you're part of this family now. That means respect, effort, and looking out for each other. Kakashi's eye narrowed. Family. You'll get used to it, Sasuke muttered, arms crossed. Minato smiled again. I'm looking forward to learning. Naruto practically tackled him into a hug. This is the coolest family ever. Later that day. The Grayson household was buzzing. Debbie was already calling the furniture store for more beds. Nolan stepped outside onto the porch, stretching, watching as the 5 ninja boys started doing push-ups under Itachi's supervision. Mark stood beside him, sipping a smoothie. You're building an army. I'm building a family, Nolan replied. Mark glanced at him. Same thing sometimes. They both watched as Naruto messed up a hand seal and exploded a clone into a puff of smoke. Nolan grinned. We'll make it work. Chapter 20, Chapter 20, Invitation to War. The morning came quickly. Mark stood at the edge of a ruined rooftop, breathing heavily. His suit was scraped, torn, and marked with bruises from a vicious fight. Across from him, standing proud and untouched, was the hulking lion-like warrior known across galaxies Battle Beast. Blood dripped from Mark's lip as he held up his fists again. I'm not done yet. Battle Beast grinned, spinning his massive mace in one hand. You have potential, boy. Strength, fire, determination, but you're not what I came for. Mark blinked. What do you mean? I seek warriors. True ones. And you're still soft. He turned, ready to walk away. But you said something. Something interesting. Mark froze. You said you have a strong father. Battle Beast glanced back over his shoulder. Bring me to him. Mark hesitated. Regret twisted in his gut immediately. Wait, that's not. Your hesitation means he is strong. I will face him. He stepped forward. Or are you too afraid to share your bloodline's pride? Before Mark could answer, Rex Ever the Loudmouth slid up beside him, bruised and limping. He's talking about Omni-Man. Grayson lives over near the suburbs, outside the city. Rex, shut up. Mark snapped. Battle Beast growled with excitement. Excellent. He leapt into the air without another word, disappearing toward the horizon with incredible speed. Mark stared after him, wide-eyed. Crap. I just led a war machine to my house. Back at the Grayson household. Nolan was in the backyard, overseeing training. Naruto and Sasuke were practicing elemental control, Itachi was sparring with Kakashi, and Minato was quietly studying the scrolls Nolan had given them that morning. System inventory, unlocked scrolls. Wind release, Gale Palm. Fire release, Phoenix Fire Jutsu. Water clone technique. Lightning style, static grip. Chakra control drill. Nolan passed each scroll out according to talent. Take your time. Master one before moving to another. Focus. Minato nodded. Understood. Naruto was already yelling, I'm gonna learn 'em all. Suddenly, Nolan's phone rang. Debbie's contact. He answered immediately. Debbie. Her voice was panicked. Cecil just called me. Mark brought Battle Beast to Earth. He told him about you. You need to get ready. Now. Nolan's expression turned cold in an instant. I'll handle it. He hung up and turned toward the kids. Training's done. Inside. Now. But I was about to. Naruto began. Inside, Naruto, Nolan barked. The sharp tone froze everyone. They obeyed instantly, sensing something serious. Nolan cracked his neck, rising off the ground, his voice low. So, he wants a fight. He flew up into the sky, breaking the sound barrier as he raced toward the oncoming threat. Back with Mark. Mark was already on the phone with Cecil. I messed up. Battle Beast is heading straight for my dad. Cecil's voice came through, sharp and controlled. We're tracking him. If Nolan doesn't stop him, no one else can. Stay back, Mark. Do not interfere. But let him handle it. You might be the key to ending this peacefully, but right now, he's Earth's only hope of surviving it. Mark lowered the phone, watching the horizon as two shapes rocketed toward one another in the sky. Nolan vs. Battle Beast. This wasn't just a fight. This was war. Chapter 21, Chapter 21, Titans in the Stars. The sky cracked. A sonic boom shattered clouds as Nolan appeared high above the city, floating with a calm fury in his eyes. A moment later, Battle Beast descended like a meteor, landing atop a skyscraper, the impact sending out a shockwave that shook the surrounding buildings. You came, Nolan said flatly. You are the one they call Omni-Man, Battle Beast said, his voice deep with challenge. I have come for battle. I will know your worth, through war. Nolan floated down, arms at his sides. I don't use weapons. Battle Beast didn't hesitate. He let go of his mace and axe. The weapons hit the ground with a clang, cracking the rooftop beneath. Then I won't either. Nolan shook his head. No. Use them. Battle Beast blinked. I want you at full strength. I'm not fighting a half measure. Nolan's gaze sharpened. And I want to fight in space. A grin tugged at Battle Beast's fanged lips. A warrior's heart. I like it. In the blink of an eye, Nolan shot into the sky, Battle Beast right behind him, both piercing the atmosphere like twin comets. Heat and friction licked off their bodies until, suddenly, there was silence, the vacuum of space. High above Earth, the stars bore witness to what was to come. They hovered, eyeing each other, then... boom! The clash sent shockwaves through the upper stratosphere. Fists collided with enough force to bend gravity. A single punch from Battle Beast sent Nolan hurling across a field of space, only for Nolan to stop mid-flight, rocket forward, and slam his fist into Battle Beast's chest, sending him reeling. Satellites shorted out. International space stations shook. On Earth, even Cecil's underground command center registered seismic pulses from orbit. In the Grayson home, everyone stood outside, staring at the flashes above the clouds. Are those stars exploding? Naruto whispered. No, Mark said, landing next to them, voice quiet. That's just Dad fighting. In space. Battle Beast laughed, wiping blood from his jaw. You are strong, Viltrumite. Nolan's nose bled. A rare thing. He didn't wipe it. You're not bad either. Their fists clashed again. The stars trembled. This was no skirmish. This was a war of monsters. A battle between legends. And Earth watched in silent awe. Chapter 22, Chapter 22, Clash of Monsters. The silence of space was broken again by shockwaves of fists colliding. Nolan's arm blurred through the void, slamming into Battle Beast's side. The alien warrior grunted, his armor cracking slightly, but his grin never left. He responded with a brutal backhand, sending Omni-Man spiraling toward a nearby asteroid. Nolan caught himself mid-spin, flipped, and launched toward the beast with a roar. Crack! Their heads collided, neither backing down. Back on Earth, the sky shimmered every few seconds with distant flashes of blue and gold. It was like a thunderstorm in orbit. Mark, Naruto, Sasuke, and the others stood outside, watching the sky light up with raw power. He's really fighting that guy, in space, Mark murmured. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. He's holding back. Naruto looked at him. Who? Battle Beast. No, Sasuke said. Omni-Man. In space. Battle Beast came swinging with his mace now, Nolan having given permission earlier. The massive weapon glowed with unknown energy, and when it hit, even Nolan felt the sting. A strike to the chest sent him flying through a chunk of space debris, reducing it to dust. You bleed. Battle Beast bellowed. You fall. You feel pain. Nolan wiped blood from his mouth, floating back into range. So do you. With a burst of speed, Nolan hit Battle Beast with a flurry of blows: stomach, chest, jaw, shoulder, throat. Then he grabbed the beast's arm and spun him, launching him into the orbit of the moon. Battle Beast landed feet first, leaving a crater in the moon's surface. He looked up with a growl and leapt off the surface, heading straight back. Boom! The two clashed again mid-space. Blasts of force lit up the sky. From Earth, they were meteors. Gods in the heavens, tearing each other apart. At Cecil's base, technicians scrambled as readings spiked. He's keeping up with Battle Beast, one agent whispered. No, Cecil muttered, eyes glued to the screen. He's beating him. Back in battle. Nolan caught Battle Beast's arm, twisted it, and slammed him into a frozen comet. The impact shattered the rock, fragments glimmering like stardust. Battle Beast coughed, blood floating in slow, red orbs around him. He looked up, smiling through broken teeth. You are more than they said. Nolan hovered, breathing steadily. I told you. I gave up conquering. But if you threaten my home... He darted forward and punched Battle Beast so hard the sound reached Earth like distant thunder. I will end you. Battle Beast finally staggered back, floating limp, defeated, but still conscious. His mace drifted beside him. He grinned. Worthy. Nolan floated there, waiting. But Battle Beast didn't move. The fight was over. Chapter 23, Chapter 23, A Warrior's Honor. Battle Beast floated in space, battered and bruised, his body floating in the void like a rag doll. Nolan hovered nearby, watching his opponent carefully. His breathing was slow and steady, though his knuckles were cracked and bleeding. The silence between them was deafening. You. Battle Beast panted, blood floating from his lip in tiny bubbles. You have beaten me. Nolan stared down at him, his expression unreadable. I have. A tense pause filled the empty space. Battle Beast grinned. Then, kill me. His voice was filled with grim acceptance. I have faced countless foes. None have ever bested me like this. I came to die, knowing that my death would be a worthy end. So do it. Nolan shook his head. I don't kill out of spite. I kill to protect. The words hung in the air, cold and serious. You want to die? Nolan's eyes narrowed. Then you can choose. Fight me again, when you're ready, or you can live. But you'll answer to me from now on. I'm not letting you wander the stars after this. Battle Beast blinked, incredulous. He had never been shown mercy in this way. You're not going to finish it. You've beaten me. You could destroy me. I don't need to, Nolan replied, voice low but unwavering. I want something more from you. More. Battle Beast said with a laugh that had a hint of disbelief. You're a warrior. You don't make deals. Nolan's eyes sharpened. I'm offering you a chance to be something greater. Join me. Join my family. You will fight by my side, not as an enemy, but as a son. Battle Beast's jaw dropped. Son? What? You heard me. You're a warrior, I respect that, but you're also lost. You have no home. No place to belong, Nolan said, his tone softening slightly. I've fought with people like you who've been thrown to the edge of the universe and have no reason to return. I'll give you a reason. You'll be part of my family. If you agree, I'll train you, and we'll face each other in combat once a year. But only once. You'll grow, become stronger. I'll help you. Mark, hovering nearby, blinked rapidly, caught in a mixture of disbelief and confusion. He couldn't believe what his father was saying. Dad? Offering Battle Beast a place in the family? Cecil's command center. Cecil, watching from Earth, had his hand to his face. He was visibly stunned. I've never seen Omni-Man back down from a fight. Let alone offer something like this. This is insane. He glanced at his technicians. We might be witnessing something no one ever expected. Back in space. Battle Beast's heart pounded in his chest. You would do this? After everything? Yes, Nolan answered firmly. Because I see a fighter in you, and I respect that. I won't let you die here in the cold vacuum. You deserve more. I'll give you purpose. Battle Beast looked down at his shredded armor, his body aching, his pride wounded. He had never known mercy like this. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, his mind shifted, a new thought creeping in. Finally, after a long silence, Battle Beast looked up, his gaze steady. I accept. You've beaten me. You've shown me a warrior's honor, and for that, I'll fight by your side. But only once a year, Nolan Grayson. Nolan nodded. Once a year. And when that time comes, I will push you to your limit. Every year, you will grow stronger, or I will destroy you. Battle Beast grinned through gritted teeth. A worthy challenge. You truly are a warrior. Nolan extended his hand, and for a moment, the space around them seemed to still, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Then welcome to the family, Battle Beast. Battle Beast took Nolan's hand, shaking it with a strength that matched the battle they had just fought. Back on Earth. Mark was still in shock, staring up at the sky. You're serious about this? Nolan flew back toward Earth, his cape billowing in the wind. I am. Battle Beast has potential. I'm not just going to kill him because he's strong. He deserves a chance to be something better. Mark couldn't find words. He had never expected this. His father, the one who had once been the ruthless conqueror of worlds, now seemed to be offering a second chance to someone who had terrorized countless civilizations. What does this mean? Mark thought, his mind reeling. What are you doing, Dad? In the Grayson household. Inside, Debbie was sitting at the table, reading over a few reports, when the door opened and Nolan walked in. The kids were already gathered around, and Naruto and Sasuke were happily discussing their training with the other kids. Nolan stood in the doorway for a moment, scanning the room. Mark was standing next to him, still processing everything that had happened. You're back, Debbie said, looking up at him. I'm back, Nolan said, his voice steady. Mark shook his head. Dad, I don't get it. You let him live. After everything he's done. Sometimes, Nolan said quietly, you have to let the warrior in someone choose their path. Battle Beast is a monster. But he can also be something more. I'm giving him the chance to be something better. For all of us. Debbie stood and walked over to Nolan, placing a hand on his shoulder. You really think this will work? Nolan looked at her, his expression firm. I do. Chapter 24, Beast in the House. The front door creaked open as Nolan stepped inside, battle-worn but calm. The floor trembled slightly under the heavy footfalls that followed him. Battle Beast stood in the doorway tall, imposing, and still scarred from his brutal fight in space. His single eye roamed the house as if assessing a battlefield. Mark was the first to speak. Dad, what is he doing here? He's family now, Nolan replied simply, closing the door behind them. Mark's jaw slackened. You adopted Battle Beast. I made a deal with him, Nolan said, walking into the living room. 1 fight per year. In exchange, he lives here. Learns. Adapts. I do not adapt, Battle Beast growled, scanning the room filled with unfamiliar furniture, smells, and humans. I conquer. But I will try. From the couch, Naruto blinked, mouth still stuffed with chips. Wait, so now we got a space lion uncle. Sasuke crossed his arms. He looks strong. Dangerous. He's both, Nolan confirmed. But he's also loyal now. Just like you. Debbie came in from the kitchen, towel in hand. She froze when she saw the hulking lion alien ducking into the room. Nolan. I know, Nolan said calmly. It's a lot. A lot? You brought the intergalactic murder lion into our home. He's not going to hurt anyone, Nolan reassured her. Besides, I already told Cecil. He's fine with it. Shocked, but fine. Shocked? He almost fainted when you said you adopted him, Mark muttered, slumping into the chair. Minato and Kakashi stood by the hallway, peeking around the corner. I've seen wild beasts before, Kakashi whispered. But this guy? He's on a whole different level. Battle Beast turned toward the younger shinobi. You too. Do you fight? Sometimes, Minato said cautiously. Good. We'll spar later. Minato lit up. Yes. Debbie sighed and rubbed her forehead. Great. Now I have 5 sons under the roof. And one of them could tear the house in half sneezing. Battle Beast raised a claw. I do not sneeze. Sure, Debbie said, walking back toward the kitchen. He can sleep in the basement with the others. I will sleep standing, Battle Beast said proudly. Near a window. So I can watch the stars. That night, dinner was surprisingly quiet. Battle Beast sat at the end of the table, poking at roasted chicken and vegetables like they were foreign objects. This meat is cooked. Yeah, Naruto said between slurps of ramen. We do that here. I prefer raw. But, this is acceptable. Mark watched silently, still trying to process everything. Across from him, Sasuke and Itachi ate without saying much. Naruto smiled like this was just another day. Nolan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. We're not a normal family. We never were. But this might be the strongest home on the planet. Debbie raised a brow. You mean that literally? Yes, Nolan smirked. And I like it that way. Chapter 25, Chapter 25, Strength in the House. The backyard had turned into a makeshift training ground. The grass was scorched in patches from earlier clone drills, and the air was thick with tension and focus. Nolan and Battle Beast stood with arms folded, watching closely. Minato and Kakashi darted across the yard, clashing in a fast-paced blur of movement and chakra. Kunao clinked, small bursts of wind erupted with each deflection. Both boys were quick and calculating, but Itachi's sudden appearance in the match changed everything. This is now a three-way spar, Itachi said calmly as he dropped into the fray. Minato grinned. You're on. Kakashi adjusted his forehead protector. Why do I feel like we're about to lose? In another corner of the yard, Naruto and Sasuke were facing off. Sasuke's expression was sharp, Sharingan activated, while Naruto had 2 shadow clones weaving between him and his rival. You're getting better, Naruto, Sasuke muttered, dodging a clone's kick. Of course. Naruto beamed. Big bro Nolan's training's working. Nolan smiled faintly as he watched them all his mismatched sons from different worlds, training like brothers. They're adapting quickly, Battle Beast observed. They're strong, Nolan replied. But what matters more is that they're growing. Battle Beast gave a soft grunt. You've changed. Nolan chuckled. So have you. There was a brief silence, then Nolan glanced sideways at his towering new son. How about a challenge? He said. Arm wrestling. Battle Beast turned, one eye gleaming. You challenge me? Nolan smirked. Don't get too excited. We'll keep it friendly. The boys stopped sparring and ran over immediately, eyes sparkling with anticipation. Yes. Naruto shouted. This is gonna be awesome. Do it. Minato laughed. Sasuke and Itachi exchanged a rare amused glance, while Kakashi just whispered, place your bets. Right then, the back door creaked open. Debbie stepped out, sunglasses on her head, a grocery bag in each hand. She took one look at the crowd gathering around a patio table and said flatly, if either of you uses even 1% of your power, you'll destroy the house. Battle Beast looked genuinely disappointed. Then what's the point? Mark came jogging through the side gate at that exact moment, William close behind. Did I miss? Oh my god, they're arm wrestling. William's eyes widened. This is better than pay-per-view. Nolan glanced at Battle Beast, then back at Debbie. We'll save it for later. Battle Beast grumbled but nodded. Then when? We can spar again tomorrow, Nolan offered. Battle Beast looked at him, surprised but silent. In the back of Nolan's mind, he sighed to himself. I really did this, because I felt bad for him. He looked so lost. And well, he was my favorite character from the Invincible comics. Battle Beast stepped back with a proud grunt. Very well. Tomorrow, then. A proper battle. Mark laughed, clapping William on the back. This house is actually insane. William grinned. And I love every second of it. As the sun set and the kids resumed training in smaller groups, Nolan stood at the edge of the yard, arms crossed, watching it all unfold. His house was full, loud, chaotic, and alive. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't scare him. Chapter 26, Chapter 26, Visitors from the Stars. Location, Mars, crater outskirts. The red sands of Mars erupted under the pressure of two titans. Omni-Man and Battle Beast stood at opposite ends of the crater, faces stoic, muscles tight with tension. Debris from their initial skirmish still floated lazily in the weak Martian gravity, scattered like confetti from a celebration of power. Ready again? Nolan asked, rolling his shoulders. Battle Beast cracked his neck. This time, I won't hold back. The two launched at each other like comets, fists clashing in the air with a thunderous shockwave that sent sand flying for miles. Each blow sent tremors through the crust of the planet. The silence of space couldn't mute the force they generated. Suddenly a flash of light. A small spacecraft swooped low over the crater before hovering above them. From it descended Alan the alien, floating gently between the two warriors just as Battle Beast roared and reeled back a punch aimed at Nolan's jaw. Stop! Alan shouted, landing right in the middle. Battle Beast froze, his fist inches from Nolan's face. Nolan simply raised an eyebrow. That was sudden. Who dares interrupt this duel? Battle Beast snarled, his voice vibrating through his chest. Alan held up both hands, calm but clearly aware he was in dangerous company. Whoa, hey, my bad. I didn't know I was showing up mid-fight, all right? I didn't come to interrupt. I came to talk. Just, thought this could wait a minute. You thought wrong, Battle Beast growled, backing off slightly but clearly not happy. I'm sorry, okay. Alan said. Really? But it's important. Nolan floated a bit away and crossed his arms. You've got my attention. Make it quick. Alan exhaled. All right. I came to talk about the Viltrum Empire. That got Nolan's full attention. Go on. I talked to Mark, Alan continued. He told me everything about you not finishing the mission, about how you are staying on Earth, training these strange human kids, and something about adopting a monster warrior. Battle Beast stood taller, proudly crossing his arms. I am no monster. I am Battle Beast. His son, now. I accepted the bond of combat. Alan blinked. Yeah, okay. That's new. Right then, a blue streak shot through Mars' thin atmosphere. Mark landed a moment later beside Alan, brushing dust from his suit. Hey, sorry I'm late. You could have told me your dad was brawling in the middle of a Martian canyon, Alan muttered. Mark rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, that's kinda just normal now. Nolan gave a small nod to Mark. You told him everything. Everything but the part where you murdered the Guardians of the Globe, Mark replied dryly. Didn't think that'd help the conversation. Alan sighed. Look, I don't want to fight. I'm here to offer a solution. We need to figure out what happens if the Viltrumites send someone to check on Earth. They will, Nolan said flatly. And when they do, Alan continued, we'll need allies. Not just brute force strategy. We need to prepare. And I think this strange little family you've built might be exactly what we need. Battle Beast grunted. You interrupt my duel for words. They better be worth the fight I lost. You didn't lose anything, Nolan said calmly. We'll spar again tomorrow. Battle Beast crossed his arms again. Very well. Let the alien speak. Alan looked between the two powerhouses, then at Mark. So, we cool now? For now, Nolan said. Until next time, Battle Beast added, giving Alan a long stare. As the tension eased, the trio turned to face the horizon of Mars. Alan smiled nervously. Man, Earth's gotten way more dramatic since I left. Chapter 27, Chapter 27, Truth in the Crater. Mars, still and red, echoed faintly with the earlier clash. The crater remained quiet now, save for the low hum of Alan's ship parked nearby. Nolan floated down to perch on a jagged outcrop of Martian stone, arms folded as he looked out across the dusty plain. Mark hovered beside him. Alan stood nearby, still processing what he had walked into. Alan broke the silence. So, what's the real story here, Nolan? Not the propaganda. Not the peaceful expansion talk you gave Earth before you know, murdered Earth's most powerful heroes. Mark tensed but stayed quiet. Nolan exhaled, not looking at either of them. The truth is that the Viltrum Empire is dying. Alan raised an eyebrow. Wait, what? Nolan finally turned to face him. We were once trillions strong, spanning systems. Then came the purges of bloodbath. We executed every single Viltrumite who wasn't considered strong enough. Those deemed weak were erased. Mark's eyes widened slightly. He hadn't heard this part before. There was no trial. No mercy. Just blood and pride, Nolan continued. That purge wiped out most of our population. Now, we're barely pushing 100, maybe 50 active agents scattered across the stars, give or take. That's all that's left of the Empire. Alan's antenna twitched. You're saying there are less than 100 Viltrumites alive? Maybe 80, Nolan corrected. That's why I was sent to Earth. Not just to conquer it. To find a species compatible enough to reproduce with. Mark was the first test. Mark blinked. Wait. What? Nolan looked to him. I didn't want to tell you before. But yes. You were born to prove a hybrid could survive Viltrumite DNA and Earth's biology. Strong, fast, and still able to blend in. Alan looked absolutely stunned. So Earth wasn't just a target, it was a cradle. Nolan nodded. If Earth worked, other Viltrumites would come to seed new lines. Expand again. Quietly. Patiently. Not just conquest continuation. Mark clenched his fists. Was that all I was to you? An experiment? No, Nolan said firmly, finally locking eyes with his son. You were the reason I changed. I was loyal to Viltrum until I realized that what we were doing was extinction dressed as strength. Alan stepped forward. So why not go public? Why not warn other planets? Because if the Empire catches wind that I've defected, they'll send someone, Nolan said. Someone worse than me. Stronger. Smarter. Less conflicted. Alan looked grim. Like conquest. Or Thag, Nolan added. You think I'm bad? You haven't met the monsters who enjoy their assignments. Mark shuddered slightly. So, what do? We build, Nolan said quietly. We train. We prepare Earth to stand on its own. And if the Empire comes, we fight back. With everything we've got. Alan nodded slowly. Then maybe, just maybe, we've got a chance. The three stood in silence for a moment. Then Battle Beast, who had been sitting nearby sharpening his weapon, grunted. Next time you want to cry about your doomed species, do it after the duel. Nolan smirked slightly. Tomorrow. Chapter 28, Chapter 28, Sons of a Dying Empire. Alan folded his arms, staring at the ground, kicking a bit of Martian dust. So, You're just gonna protect Earth? That's it. Nolan nodded. That's the plan. But what about the other worlds? Alan insisted. Do you know how many planets the Viltrumites are targeting right now? Hundreds. Thousands even. They need help. Mark stepped forward, urgency in his voice. Dad, come on. You know what they're capable of. You were one of them. You know how hopeless it is when they show up. You could turn the tide. Nolan looked at him quietly. I said I would protect Earth. Alan's shoulders slumped. So that's it? You're gonna let the rest of the universe burn? There was a pause. Nolan exhaled. I said I'd protect Earth, but that doesn't mean I don't care. I just need a reason. Alan raised an eyebrow. A reason? Nolan turned to face him. I won't fight for the coalition. But I will fight for my family. That's what changed me in the first place. Mark's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? Nolan looked at Alan. Become my son. Like Naruto. Like Sasuke. Like Itachi. Like Battle Beast. Alan's eyes went wide. Wait, what? Mark blinked. What? Nolan gave a half smile. I mean it. Family fights harder than armies. You want my strength? Be family. I'll train you, I'll back you up, I'll fight the Viltrum Empire beside you, but only if we fight as kin. Alan stared, his mouth slightly open. I'm not asking you to give up who you are, Nolan said. But if I'm going to die for anyone other than Earth, I need to belong to something. And right now, my family is all that matters. Alan looked down. Thought for a moment. Then lifted his gaze, antenna twitching. All right. Fine. I'll be your son. Mark choked. Are we just collecting sons now? Battle Beast chuckled. It's working. Alan stepped forward and extended a hand. Nolan took it. Then I'm yours, Alan said. And when the time comes, I'll be there. Nolan turned to Battle Beast. You coming too? Battle Beast cracked his neck and stood up. I go where the strongest battles are. If Viltrumites wait on the edge of the galaxy, I'll be there. Sons or not. Mark threw up his hands. Well, I guess I've got 4 little brothers now. Alan laughed. Make that 5. Technically, I'm the oldest. Actually, Battle Beast rumbled. I am the oldest. Mark sighed. This house is gonna get real crowded. Nolan looked at them all, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. Then we'd better get stronger. Chapter 29, Chapter 29, The Future in Their Eyes. Nolan descended from orbit, the red tint of Mars still on his suit as he flew back toward home. The sky was clear, the sun was warm, and for the first time in a long time, he felt lighter. He stepped through the front door. Jebby looked up from the couch, saw Alan floating just behind him, and nearly dropped her glass of water. What in the world, Nolan? Why is Alan the alien here? Long story, Nolan said. But I adopted him. You what? From the kitchen, Naruto popped his head around the corner with a grin. Awesome. More brothers. Sasuke gave a small nod from behind him, barely looking up from the book he was reading. Itachi, calmly washing dishes, offered Alan a respectful bow. Battle Beast stomped in last, shouldering through the doorway, still humming with leftover adrenaline. Nolan barely had time to explain when the ding hit again in his head. System notification due to adopting Battle Beast and Alan, requirements met. Rewarding 6 advanced legacy cards: Hokage Minato, Edo Itachi, DMS Kakashi, 6 paths Naruto, Rinnegan, Sasuke. Once assigned, subjects will inherit knowledge, ninjutsu, experience, and strength. Nolan blinked. Holy hell! He turned to the boys standing in the living room. Naruto, Sasuke, Itachi, Kakashi, Minato. Come here. Minato and Kakashi walked over from the backyard, where they'd been meditating. Naruto was already there, eager and bouncing on his heels. Sasuke stood up slowly. Itachi wiped his hands with a towel and joined the group. I have something for you all, Nolan said, summoning the cards in his palm. Each one shimmered with blinding chakra energy, swirling with hidden power. You'll understand when I give these to you, he said. One by one, he pressed a card to each of their foreheads. It was like an explosion of light. The house shook slightly as chakra surged around the boys. Wind spiraled around them. Alan stepped back with a grunt, Mark just arriving outside and stopping mid-stride. What the hell is? He stared. Standing in place of the boys were now their adult, future selves. Minato now radiated the calm strength of the yellow flash, his cloak drifting behind him in an invisible wind. Edo Itachi stood like a ghost in flesh, composed and sharp-eyed. DMS Kakashi had a fierce presence, his Sharingan and Manjiki glowing. Rinnegan Sasuke stood with cool detachment, and Naruto cloaked in Six Paths mode grinned with power rolling off of him like heat waves. Battle Beast's eyes lit up. Yes. Finally. They're worth fighting. Alan stood frozen, blinking. They just got older. How what? Mark was just as lost. Wait, that's still Naruto? And Sasuke? But they're grown up now. Jebi came out, holding a tray of lemonade. She nearly dropped it when she saw them. Nolan. What happened to the kids? They're the same, Nolan said. Just, more of who they were meant to be. Minato turned to him with a knowing smile. Thank you, father. Nolan looked between all of them, his sons some born of this world, some from another life, some adopted through strength alone. For the first time, Earth felt less like a mission, and more like a home. Chapter 30, Training the Next Generation. The newly aged versions of Naruto, Sasuke, Itachi, and the rest of the boys stood in the living room, taking in the new weight of their bodies, their memories, their experience. Naruto's eyes gleamed with the excitement of newfound power, his Six Paths chakra humming just below the surface. Sasuke looked more reserved, but his Rinnegan eyes glowed with quiet intensity. Minato was calm, like the wind before a storm. Itachi, always composed, stood as if the world hadn't shifted beneath his feet. Kakashi just raised an eyebrow, his Sharingan already assessing the room and its new dynamics. Mark was in awe, unsure of what to make of all this, but filled with a strange pride. He couldn't quite grasp how fast everything was changing. Nolan stood at the center of it all, arms crossed, assessing the new power before him. We'll need to adjust the training, Nolan said, his voice authoritative, but with a hint of excitement. With all of you now equipped with your future selves' knowledge, we need to push your limits, see what you can do. There are threats out there that won't wait for us to catch up. Naruto, ever enthusiastic, bounced on his heels. What do we do first, Dad? Nolan grinned at the eagerness. For starters, Naruto, I want you to focus on using your shadow clones for water walking. Sasuke, Itachi, use your clones for training in different environments. We're going to need your skills sharp and fast. Battle Beast. Nolan turned to the towering warrior, who stood there, fists clenched. You're going to join in on the sparring with them. Get them ready for what's coming. Finally, Battle Beast grunted, already cracking his knuckles. Mark watched, his eyes flickering between his father and the others. It felt like everything was shifting, and he wasn't sure where he fit in anymore. He thought back to what his dad had said about stepping away from being a hero, about wanting to live a normal life, but now, seeing the newly empowered versions of his younger brothers and the looming danger, Mark wasn't so sure. He crossed the room toward his father, a concerned look on his face. "Dad, what's the plan? After all of this training, after we've gotten stronger?" Nolan turned, his expression hardening just slightly. "The Viltrumites are still a threat, Mark. But my priority is protecting Earth. That means we need to be prepared for anything." He paused, looking at the others, the weight of his words hanging in the air. "The rest of the universe can fight their own battles. Earth comes first." Mark felt a sinking sensation in his stomach, his internal conflict growing. "But what about the other worlds? Alan's asking you to fight with them, to help protect the rest of the universe. Why are you so focused on Earth? Don't we need to be a part of something bigger?" Nolan's eyes softened for a brief moment, but his voice remained firm. "Some things, Mark, are more personal. Earth is my home now. I won't let anything happen to it, no matter what. As for helping the rest of the universe..." Nolan looked down for a second, as if weighing his words. "I'll protect Earth. The rest is up to others." Mark opened his mouth to argue but stopped when he saw the weight of his father's words settling in. "Get to work," Nolan said, cutting the tension. "You all have a lot to learn." The boys nodded, breaking up into small groups. Naruto and Sasuke immediately began practicing their clones. Itachi and Minato went off to meditate and focus on their chakra control, while Kakashi stood back, ready to intervene if anyone needed guidance. Nolan looked at Battle Beast, who stood by, clearly eager for a real fight. "You've got the basics of the fight down, Battle Beast," Nolan said. "Now you need to learn how to teach them. Their growth depends on you pushing them to their limits. You're not just here to battle, you're here to shape them." Battle Beast nodded, his eyes narrowing in determination. "Understood." Just as Nolan was about to turn and walk upstairs to check on Debbie, Mark approached again, his expression still filled with questions. "Dad, do you really think we can win? Against everything that's coming?" Nolan paused, meeting his son's eyes with a steely gaze. "I don't think we can win, Mark. I know we can." Mark took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his father's words. It was rare to hear such certainty from Nolan. Omni-Man, the man who had killed the Guardians of the Globe, the man who had stood against the world. But hearing him say it, for some reason, Mark felt the spark of hope reignite within him. "We'll be ready," Nolan added, before walking out the door to help the boys train.